Good evening, everybody. Welcome to PLUNGEcast, and especially to Kiwis and comic book shows, from where we basically talk to people from Oceania, which includes Australia, New Zealand, and the Pacific Islands. A show about people who are creating comics out here in the bottom of the world, like they said, down under. Especially tonight, we do have people from down under, and it's two brothers. And I'm quite excited to be talking to them today about their comic, and especially this one that I got sent an email, and I'm going to talk to these guys in a minute, but introduce them and let them introduce themselves first. But here's a little snippet that I got sent, which I thought was a very, very cool way of actually, if I can find this little thing I've got, which is a very cool way to introduce yourself to, someone who doesn't know you, and how to, just say, hey, this is what I'm doing. And especially in a package deal like this, it's very professional. I thought it was very professional. It made me think, hey, this is someone I would like to talk to, without actually getting some sort of like I know a lot of text, but just straight to the point. Like, this is our artwork. This is what it is. This is, here's what what we got going on. And of course, this is the second time I've had somebody work with us through Comic Studio, and it's something that we know the gentleman there over there in Aussie who's presenting part of this sort of workload where they help people in Aussie kind of get their work out and get promotion and stuff like that. And we'll hear more about that soon. But there is also a interview I did last year with the gentleman from Comic X Studio. And so, if you guys want to know how to put together something really cool, this is a really cool way to do something, to just send ahead and let people know before, if they want to be interested, to introduce yourself to them. And just, 2 pages, a lot of pretty cool artwork. Snippets of stuff, not a lot of detail, because you don't want to give away what you're talking about, but also just to say this is what we're doing. And I think that was pretty cool. So without much further ado, I'm going to ask the boys to introduce themselves to you. Boys, for me, it's like I'm 50, so anybody like under like 20 years difference is like boys to me. So hopefully you guys don't think like I'm like aging you guys or something like that.
Not at all. All good.
All right, guys. Tell us. I'm going to put you on solo and get you to introduce yourselves, and each one, so I know who's who here.
All right. I'm Josh Mack.
I'm Aaron Mack. We are the Mack brothers. What else usually goes in the introduction?
And we're the creators of the Gods Among Men series.
That's it.
That's all we got for now.
It's a work in progress. Generally, I guess he's the original ideas guy, and I'm sort of the one who facilitates that ideas. I like to describe it as he's like the natural wellspring of ideas. He's always coming up with all these different concepts and original stories. Meanwhile, if he's the wellspring, I'm like the fountain who kind of receives that natural resource and then formats it and turns it into like something more like a story structure, into a script.
All right. So let's see. I was just writing down like which brother's which. So it's Josh on my right, left, and then Andrew in the black, right?
Aaron, yeah.
Aaron.
Yeah.
I'll get that right.
Josh White, Aaron Black, yeah.
Perfect, because I'm going to get mixed up with that.
Blue hair, blonde hair.
Right. So you guys are from Aussie, but are you national Aussies, or migrants like myself, or are you third generation, fourth generation? What's the deal?
National Aussie now, but we previously migrated from Singapore.
Okay. Did you move over with your as a child or older, like teenage years?
I came as a child.
I was about 19, 20 when I came.
Right. How long ago was that?
2005, 2007.
Yeah, nearly 20 years now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that would make you, Josh, about what, 39?
39 this year, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So you're the older brother. But weird thing is here, if I look at you guys, because of the mustache, you guys look actually different in age, right?
Yeah.
You guys get caught up with that before? I mean, off.
Well, there was a period of time where he had blonde hair, I had blonde hair, and people kept asking, "Are you guys twins?" And he would love it, you know. And then, yeah, he would tell people that I'm the older brother. I'm like, yeah, it's maturity, is what it is.
Awesome. So now did you guys get into comics back in Singapore, or did you, through manga, or through Western comics, or is there for me, I don't know much about the art scene in Singapore. So do you want to tell us a bit about that? Because I mean, especially Josh, you were already 19. You would have experienced that part more than possibly Aaron.
There was there's a very limited comic scene over there. I remember as a child there was probably not more than 5 different titles that were locally created.
Right.
And I don't think they were written in such a way that they were really targeted towards that Singapore audience. The storylines, even the slang they would use. So it never really took off beyond Singapore.
Right.
And that was when I was very young, maybe like 7 or 8, and nothing really came from that after that. There weren't many creators. I think my first encounter with comics was, I think the first thing I got into was X-Men. That was, in the 90s was when the animated series came out.
Yeah.
So my first contact with comics would be through that cartoon series, and around a couple of years after that was when Spawn came out.
Right.
Or at least that's when Singapore started getting Spawn comics.
Okay.
And that was something that really stood out to me. I can't say I read a lot of them. They were pretty expensive, so I could only pick 1 or 2 up every now and then. But I had a small collection. I have 10 of them.
Right. Now, were they translated into the Singapore language, or was it still English?
The first language in Singapore is English, so
okay.
All the comics, they just import them from the US.
Right. Yeah, because I find what I've heard when like Spider-Man got into in India, they used to be like an Indian, and because it's like a billion people, of course they're gonna try to get that money. But what was American dollar being twice, at that time would have been twice for New Zealand, so it would have been twice for Singapore as well, or would it be more for you guys?
I can't remember what the exchange rate was back then, but I remember the Spawn comics would cost something like $15 to $18 for one of them.
Wow.
Yeah, so you had to save up, the month, your pocket money that you got for school, so you could maybe buy one of them.
Yeah, I mean, for us here, it was, I think at that time, in the 90s, because that's when I got into comics, was around about 88, especially with X-Men. So we kind of have this similar journey when it came to, getting into comics itself. I mean, I've been into comics earlier, but X-Men was where I moved over to Marvel. But I've been from my childhood, I used to be into 2000 AD and stuff like that from 8 years onwards. But so did you try creating characters at a younger age, or looking at that, or did you just think of ideas and using your imagination to come up with characters then, or was it later on?
Well, it's funny, I've been doing creative wise, I started doing music first when I was about 12, so throughout most of my life that's the only creative thing I did. But we had this story that I wanted to tell.
Right.
And comics, we didn't even consider comics. We initially thought it'll be a book, and then we thought maybe we could do it as a movie, but the movie's too short, so we thought let's do it as a series. But we ran into a lot of problems. First of all, the production cost for something like that is astronomical. Yeah. And secondly, the subject matter that we were going to deal with made it very difficult, if not impossible, to
ethically questionable.
Yeah. Some things there was no way that we could film without a massive budget.
Yeah.
So it was only recently that Aaron came up with the idea, like, why don't we do it as a comic? That eliminates a lot of these problems. And we could definitely use this medium, being a long form kind of story that we want to tell. You can run as many issues as you need to. So
there was something as well about, because I mean, like, comics have sort of in our life been sort of a bit more background, like it was a bit more of a passive thing for a long period of time. And then just like a few years ago, I got really obsessive with comics, and that was when I started talking with Josh, and like, we had this story idea that we've been just kind of floating and pitching and developing for ages, until suddenly it clicked. It was like, why don't we do it as a comic? Because we knew it had to be some kind of, or really should be some kind of visual medium to tell the story. And that we found actually worked to our advantage, because sometimes when you watch a film, with this live action, there's a little bit of this, confronting nature about what you're seeing. But the nature of comics, because people are so used to reading about superheroes and fantasy and sci-fi, so I feel like the medium automatically creates this detachment. You can sort of step back and view the subject matter, the events, and we found that beneficial for this, so people could kind of step back outside of the sort of confronting subject matter, and I think it works well.
And I think this film, this idea, this idea where we thought of originally approaching it as a film translates into what you see in the final comic as well, in terms of a lot of the framing. It's a bit more unconventional compared to usual comics, because it's kind of framed like how someone would frame a scene in a movie.
So when did you, like, because you guys work together, so Aaron being the artist, or how does it work? Because
so our artist is actually, I'm not the artist.
All right, okay.
I can't draw for crap, but we have this thing where I think it was about 2021 when we decided that we did want to do a comic, and we said, all right, so like I said, he would have the original idea that started to facilitate into a script. So then we had this script and no artist, so we went to find this guy Ben Sullivan. He's a local Melbourne-based artist, and he'd been working already for about 6-7 years in the local comics industry. And we liked his stuff. We felt like he's got what it takes, and we could kind of push him into a different. So I guess Gods Among Men was something that was quite different from a lot of what's out there. So we thought maybe we could sort of tickle his fancy, and lo and behold, he saw the pitch, and I had a chat with him. I met up with him, and what ended up was meant to be a 30-minute lunch ended up being several hours, because he was just so into the idea. And that's how we found our artist Ben Sullivan.
Right. So tell us about, like, being musicians and stuff, and then transitioning to being storytellers. And I mean, like yourselves, right? I mean, like, I have a very unconventional way I got into comics myself, because I went to film school for 3 years. I came out of stage production for about 5, and then went to film school for 3 years, then had a car accident. Then I thought, like, I can't be on my feet all day with filmmaking. So I just transitioned. I mean, like, I've known comics for ages, and I've always wanted to do something like that, and just turn a film script into a comic book. And around 2007, and here we are moving onwards with this. So what was it about, like, wanting to tell a story that went, we need to get these stories onto paper and actually tell it now, and not just keep it in our heads, and talking about it amongst ourselves as brothers? And how did you arrive at that choice?
I think so a lot of the stories that we're telling now originally first started appearing in a series of songs that I had released, but the songs would always, they only show a snapshot of a certain moment in the story. You can't really piece together what's going on. So we felt it's hard. You can't really use the songs to tell everything, So the songs were kind of like additional things, but we felt we needed something that was a lot more blatant, that laid out the story in detail,
like a narrative, essentially.
And the comic just gave us the freedom to, you know, tell it as much detail as we want to dive into, you know, even certain scenes where characters are having important dialogue that a song wasn't able to capture.
I think it really helped because prior to even working on the comic, like Josh and I have worked together since 2017, where I had a similar sort of path. Like I was very into film and still am. So we collaborated a lot where I would do the music videos, you know, similar process where he'd have these original concepts, then I would sit down and work it into a script and then direct them. So when we did go over to make that transition into comics, it was kind of, it was like, oh, you know, this is already the storyboard, you know, a comic is essentially the storyboard level, just with more fleshed out detail. And so I think that was where we felt that the comic book, on top of being very similar, you know, visual medium, visual storytelling, it just meant that, oh, we could actually start it now. We worked out costing, we worked out what do we actually need, you know, similar process that we did with what we would have done for the short concept film. And we were like, oh, I think we can actually afford to get started on this and stop, you know, developing and developing. So that was the key thing for us. We hate monotony and sort of that stagnant, you know, when an idea just keeps hitting a wall. There's nothing more painful than that.
And with like you know, moving, when did you realize that it was easier to go to comics rather than try to do the filmmaking process? You know, because I mean, there is a huge cost of filmmaking, so I understand why you would like go, hey, you know, it's probably easier for us to go, you know, because you went to thinking about writing it first as a book, you said. Tell us about that, and then the process to going to comics.
I don't actually recall when we actually made the transition. I know that, you know, there was a book, like there still is the beginnings of a book, several chapters that I wrote. That kind of, it's almost like a diary where it's just random and it jumps all over chronologically. That we've been using kind of as like our Bible in a way to reference. It's not complete, but I started it, and the reason I never finished it was I didn't have the ending that I wanted for it yet. But we kind of figured out like, okay, let's make a film and we'll arrive at that ending in the end. But, you know, once we started working out how to do it, what we need to do it, it just stalled for years because we couldn't do it and we were going to focus on other things.
I think that jump over to the comics occurred when I had that, because I think it was 2021. It was sort of, there was still lockdowns happening and everything, so I had to find some new obsession. So I got into Facebook and found all these comic groups. So I started buying comics like crazy. And so this big rabbit hole I went down, I kept reading comic after comic, and I was reading a lot of Spawn, and I was starting to see the storytelling capabilities of a comic. It was like, I've read comics before, but now in this sort of obsessive state, it was like, oh, I was seeing it in a whole new light. And I started to kind of, you know, toy with the idea, like, what if we did it, you know, as a comic? And so I sat down with Josh, and I remember we talked about that. I said, look, I've been reading so many comics, like, what about this idea of what if we do a comic? And we started brainstorming, and that was when you know, we started coming up with like, all right, what's issue 1, you know, because we've got all these chapters, all this source material to refer to, but the question is like, you have to sort of use your discretion and go, all right, now that we're going to approach it, you know, once we decided it was going to be a comic, then it was like, all right, we need to see, it's our pilot, right? So we had to really lock in what we were going to show in the pilot.
And it kept getting refined along the way.
So when you did you put together, I mean, like, you know, I saw the pitch there, but like, how did you go about saying this is the pilot we want to show people that this is the way, these are the characters, this is the build up to it? And I like the idea because, like, I mean, in 2021, you know, with everybody being stuck at home, confined to their, you know, in prison at home, basically, you got a chance to like do a lot of like networking, a lot of like you know, a lot of people were online and looking at what was available, and like you said, you know, reached out and really deep dived. And I think a lot of people at that time did the same. I've talked to a lot of people around that time when they said, well, you know, we've been wanting to do it for years, and now it sort of gave us the chance to do it and to see people, you know, kind of move in a different way when it came to storytelling, and having to focus and realizing that, yes, we can do this now. There's a chance to do something that we've always thought about. And how did you realize that what you wanted in the art style, as well as how do you want to tell the story with this comic book you guys were putting together?
I think, well, I think we've talked about the art style first. Like, I will say that, you know, because it was our first foray into it all, like there was a lot of, I guess, development within ourselves, and you know, between Josh and I and our artist Ben, I'd say the three of us really formed this, you know, this integral bond, because when we first told Ben the idea, like he liked the sound of what it was, but because of the nature of the concept, like it's a very, there's a lot of deep and, you know, double meanings and you know, hard to grasp concepts. I remember we did have to sort of I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Like,
well, again, we come back to film, because a lot of time we spent with our artists at the start was very much the similar process to how a film production starts. We actually went on location to what we, you know, the place we wanted him to draw, we brought him there, and I would tell him the stories while he was on location to get a feel. We'd take photos, and there was a lot of this like location
excursions,
scouting.
location scouting. Yeah, there was, and in the process as well, like I would hear about these, like some of these stories I'm quite familiar with, but I would also learn something new. So then I'll go, oh, I'll factor that in as, you know, plotting the overall story arcs. But it was in that process that, together with Ben sort of discovering and being seeing more of the story, that his art style actually also started to really show that. He had a great, what's really interesting, one thing that we love that was, you know, we were already quite sold on his art style, but the very first page that we did, or that he did, was page 7, which is the page on the press kit, the front of the press kit, which, you know, we thought it just had such a great, that one. You know, it had such a fantastical sort of representation of what we were trying to say. Visually, loved it. It was so spectacular. And, you know, granted, this panel even took some refining, but when he sent us this, we said, yeah, you definitely are able to express and understand, you know, where we want to take this story. And over time, you know, there were things that we would sort of work together, and he would sort of learn more about the story and go, oh, okay, so maybe instead of approaching it the way I did, I'm going to approach it this way. And now we're at this level that he just, he gets it. He gets everything we're trying to do.
So tell us about how, like, I mean, since we're talking about Ben, how you found Ben, right? And what, and then like the process, like you've already mentioned a little bit there, of how you guys started working, taking him to locations, especially, you know, like that's, I think a lot of people, because we work along like online a lot, we do a lot of reference photos. I mean, I know that's how I do it, rather than like, you know, being able to go there. Ben being actually living in, you know, in Aussie with you guys, how far away did he live, and how did you make that connection as well?
He did. He lives about half an hour away from us, so it wasn't too far. First time we met up was sort of somewhere in between. But interestingly, I mean, one of the things that we set out in the beginning was, we said it'd be nice to work with somebody who was local. And then as we kind of fleshed out the idea more, we said, no, we think it's very important to work with somebody local, because we wanted to be able to have that face-to-face time, and also really be able to, like, for example, take them out on excursions. Because we feel like if somebody was, you know, interstate, and you try and, you know, do a video call or other things like that, there's a degree, you know, that they might miss out on.
Yeah. So choosing locations and why was that important to the story that you guys are trying to tell? Because I mean, it's a true crime. I mean, not a true crime, so it's a crime story rather than a superhero story. And you know, that's probably need to tell us about a bit about the story itself. But what was the location? Why was that important?
Well, it is actually a true crime story.
Okay.
So that's why we felt it so important that Ben got to see locations and really get a feel for it. You know, we spent a lot of time, even though we've only worked on issue 1, but Ben understands where we're going and where this ends. Like however many issues there is in between, it's not something like we're going to be making up along the way. We know where the end point is, and it's just a question of, you know, how many issues there are for us to get there.
We know the arcs.
Yeah.
It's sort of the micro details that we can, you know, we work out along the way in terms of, all right, what's issue 2, what's issue 3, and so on.
One of the things I was thinking about is like that there isn't that many true crime stories when it comes to comic books. It's something that like a lot of comic people don't delve into a lot. Even like when I'm thinking about when I was looking at like doing historical fiction, I'm turning it into a fiction and not a real, you know, story. Even though I'm putting in like real things that happen and that, you know, in that story and that's happened in the past for that story that made up that story. But like I've never really thought about doing true crime. And there isn't that many people that transition to true crimes. You know, the one that comes into my head is my friend Dharma, right? That one's kind of like, that's the one that popped in my head now and as a true crime. Did you guys have to do a lot of research into like writing a true crime story, because you guys did a story, you know, looking into a book first, but then what was the difference like researching to do a comic book, because taking that true crime into a visual aspect, because I mean there isn't that many.
Because we, you know, like we knew the story, we kind of it was kind of different. We never really looked at it that way. The fact that we know the story and we know how almost unbelievable a lot of elements in it are, we realized that, you know, we couldn't make this up if we wanted to. So we were just going to stick with the facts as we know them. And the comic book, it was just very freeing. It allowed us to do a lot of things that we wouldn't otherwise have been able to do. It's so much easier to draw a location like the airport than to actually try to get to an airport.
Yeah, it was definitely it was something that we didn't think about how are we going to apply, you know, the true crime genre to the comic book format. It was just sort of the nature of the story. And the comic book format was I mean, look, one difference between the comic book format from film is things like, you know, casting and actors, because especially something like true crime, you know, you're trying to have to find somebody who captures that energy, somebody who can deliver the lines a certain way. And I think with the comic, it was just like, as long as Ben understood the character and what we were trying to do. So there were little things where we're like, oh, you know, this character, he never smiles, or he never looks worried. And Ben will go, oh, okay. And then he takes that forward, and then it's like, boom, he's got it.
It's a unique case for our comic, because it's not like what you mentioned, you know, people do research on something. In our case, we had a fully formed story, and it was the comic medium that actually suited us for what we needed to do. Yeah.
Now, tell us, I mean, being a true crime, like, tell us a bit about the situation without like trying to spoil the comic. I mean, the situation to us, because I know for me here, I probably never heard of it, but like, I mean, because of, you know, not living in Aussie or anything, but recently there's been a, you know, like a double murder that I've been following, right? Because I watch a lot of news, like especially international news. Because of my research, I'm always like, you know, I think I might actually be autistic in that way, because or neurodivergent, right? Because I get stuck onto something and I just stick onto it until I learn as much as I can, then move on to the next thing. Right now, it's China and how it's affecting the local people, right? With all the employment and stuff, all the business shutting down. And I'm thinking like, how would that affect the rest of the world and their economy, and what would affect the people living there, and will they be migrating in a mass migration because there's so much poverty happening there right now. And then also looking at this the double murder with the cop over over in Aussie right now, and how that's panning out. And then also recently there've been like a bunch of crimes there, and that's also here in New Zealand. It's not like just just over at Aussie, but it's all over the world. But with a situation like that, when the local body knows the story, and then you're trying to bring it in a different medium, like a lot of people just do documentaries, especially if they've got the money with the movie and all that, or do live action biopic or something like that. But then trying to bring them into the comic form, how much research, I should ask, did you guys do for it, right?
I think depends on how you look at it. You can either say I'm fortunate or unfortunate to have insight to this story that instead of it's not an adaptation of something, it's something that we did not see getting told. Like there's a lot of true crime, and there's also crime related dramas, a lot of dramatized stuff that you see on TV, like if you go movies like The Godfather or Casino and things like that.
Yeah.
And often that is the approach, where they go and research, they interview some people, and that's the people who are willing to talk about it. Whereas, like I said, fortunately or unfortunately, I have the insight into this story, which I have not seen told. Perspectives and things that the public doesn't know about.
Yeah.
Even though it may be happening right in front of their eyes all the time. So that's what we want to do, like shed a light on this unheard thing. And some people will probably read it and not believe it.
Right.
Yeah. Because like if you don't, on the other hand, some people might read it and go, oh shit, like this is, I see it now.
That was something quite interesting where we looked at, on top of, you look at the factors of true crime plus comic is not a very, quite a new thing, but also the fact that a lot of, nowadays true crime in film and TV, Netflix documentaries, it's huge, it's everywhere. But there are always of cases, they get reported on the news first, so people already have one form of contact with it. Whereas this time, I think we're quite confident in saying that the first contact that people have with the story is going to be through the comic.
Right. Especially on an international setting as well, right? Because this isn't just comics in the neighborhood for your local mates and stuff. You guys, where are you guys taking this? Like, are you doing the Kickstarter? How are you releasing it?
So we're gonna start. So technically, if we go by dates, we first launched the Kickstarter, which we scheduled to launch in the 26th of March.
Right.
I can pop the link in. I just realized that might be handy. So yes, first will be the Kickstarter release, and that's going to be people's first opportunity, people from within Australia, outside of Australia, to be able to sort of, get first dibs, because we're going to have a couple of exclusives on there. But technically, the very first release is going to occur on the weekend of the 6th and 7th of April at Melbourne Supernova. We will be debuting the comic there. That's it.
And the Supernova debut will be a special edition that won't be available.
Yeah.
Right. So it'd be like a limited edition just to to the was it like the expo, or is it like expo, or is it like a convention?
Like a convention. Because I think
Supernova is part of the Armageddon franchise, isn't it? Am I wrong there?
I think they're different. I remember Armageddon used to be a thing, but nowadays, so there's Supernova, then there's Oz Comic Con, and I heard something like the original organizers of, I think, Oz Comic Con, that they branched out and they created their own Metro Comic Con. So I'm not sure if Armageddon is still running. I remember it was quite a few years ago, but generally these are the three big comic conventions in Melbourne, or three biggest, I'd say.
Now, Supernova, where is Supernova held, by the way? Sorry.
Supernova is held at Flemington Racecourse, and we will be there with Comic Studio, who is
I mean, for people who don't know where Flemington is, is that like what city?
Flemington Racecourse is near the city.
It's the home of the Melbourne Cup.
It's the home of the Melbourne Cup.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's in Melbourne. Okay.
It's in Melbourne.
Easier when you get like a main city. So
yes.
So this one you're releasing in Flemington, right, in Melbourne.
Yeah.
Is it like a number 0 or is it number 1? And is it like a variant cover release just for that event? You're saying?
So yeah, it is an issue 1, and it's a foil cover.
Nice.
So that's going to be something. It's quite interesting because even our, when we work with Ben to do the cover design, we sort of all worked together on what he came back with was something quite different and unconventional. And I remember even in the beginning when I first saw it, I was like, this is bizarre. It's a bizarre design for the cover. I'm not sure. I think I might have sent you an image of that. But it's quite interesting because as time went on and I started to see people's reactions to it, even my little initial doubts, I was like, you know what, people are responding to it like, oh, there's something about this cover that stands out. For one, having the title spread out across the cover rather than be
this one here.
Top. That's the one. Yeah.
Right.
There was something about it that I noticed started to catch people's eyes, and I definitely started to see something to it.
Yeah, I mean, like it's very catchy, and I mean, in the sense, like it's you're looking at it, and I think it's a great introduction to like put it out as a special convention piece like this, right? Because it's very unique, and you want something unique, like especially. I mean, how many did you guys print out of this?
So we're still in the process of getting the copies back, but we do plan to make 50 copies. So that way it will be quite a limited run.
All right. So how much are these for, like like Aussie pricing for 50 foil covers? I mean, foil covers are pretty expensive to make. I mean, for someone who makes them, gets them made for our Kickstarters and stuff. It's a big jump when it comes to printing costs. What are you releasing these out for Supernova? And I'm sure you guys are going to be there. Are you going to be there with ComX, or is it just you guys by yourselves?
No, we'll be there with ComX, and our artist Dan Sullivan will be there as well. I'm pretty sure the plan is to have them go for about 15, just because the regular copy will go for 10, but with the foil, because we wanted to do something special and really have them pop, and because it is sort of like a Supernova exclusive first access kind of thing. So having this, what was great was when we talked to our publisher Shane over at ComX, he said the foil basically turns whites into silvers, and so when we saw this cover, we went, holy crap, we want a copy for ourselves too. So
exactly, I'm thinking I want one as well. So make sure you got one aside for me and sign, please, and I'll make sure I'll get your bank details. Because it's only in Aussie. It's not like in Australia where we've got to pay $30 to get it sent over.
No, exactly. Yeah,
I would love a copy for myself, because it is an amazing cover. It's very unique. Like a lot of times you don't see something in black, red, and white, right? Because the color tones are very unique. They really stand out. I don't know how to explain it, but red, black, and white is just one of those three tones that really in comics is just like stark, and that's what I love about this. It's not something that people would go, hey, this is my comic that I'm doing. It's more like they'll release one with a lot of colors, and so this is more what people are used to, in the sense of what they'll see on the comic shop, like on the shelf, right, compared to what they'll give as a special incentive. And that's why I think this works as a special release for Supernova, as a cover.
I'll say, and you can expand on this. What was beneficial as well is that, considering the fact that, for example, like I got into comics quite recently, and Josh is not from, like, neither of us are from long-standing comic backgrounds. I guess we approach comics a little bit differently from, we thought about making a visual story, not even necessarily like a comic. You know, there were things that we learned along the way. But I mean, you know, Josh's input is that he doesn't think, well, like laterally.
Well, I don't really know what a comic creator is supposed to think like, you know.
I get that.
Even with the cover, when my input on that was I wanted it to look like an album cover.
Hmm.
You know, so I approached it, and the direction I gave to Ben was, you know, how I would approach doing up album artwork.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's probably why it looks different.
Even the title up, down, and in the middle. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, how was it like? You know, like we're talking about like research and stuff with the comics and stuff, but how was it like actually working with an artist? Because I work with several, so each one I take in a case by case, you know, to deal with them. Like, you know, this is a different artist, this is a different person, they deal a different way. How was it with you guys working with, you know, trying to convey your story to Ben and say, this is the story? Did you hand them over like some research material as well to say, you know, because I know we talked about taking on locations, photos and references, stuff like that. But what was it like saying, this is the story we're going to tell, this is what we're looking at, and how much of a part did he play visually? Because that's his job, right? To visually convey what you're trying to tell in a literal sense of that story. What was it like, that working process for you guys?
But before you jump in, I just want to throw it out there as well. Our colorist, Wilson Go, he did all the colors that you see. And so, like, yeah, Ben did a great job laying the foundation, and he carried it further. But yes.
Well, I think, first of all, we were very fortunate to meet Ben so early on. That somebody who not just loved the story that we wanted to tell, but got it, you know. In the first few pages, there was a lot of back and forth.
Yeah.
Because he was, you know, he was giving his interpretation of the script. And I think we spent more time just sitting and talking to Ben, telling him the stories. And once we got past that little hurdle at the start, once he understood where we were going, what we were trying to do, every time he sent us a page, it was, you know, like 85, 90% perfect.
Right.
Yeah.
So did you, like, I'm like, I was talking about like sending him research material. How much of the research did you guys send him across to him to get him to understand the story?
I think
he knows everything.
Well, yeah, he is fully, you know, core team, you know, at this point in time. I mean, at this point, he's kind of like, he's in deep with us with this story. And, you know, in terms of certain aesthetic elements, you know, we did sort of go online and try and find visual references, because what was fortunate was that often it'd be, you know, we might find a movie scene, but in that movie scene, they've gotten one element accurate, but not with everything else. So we'd say, okay, this bit, but look at this one element, you know. So that was for the aesthetics. But Ben got it. He got it. Even we continued to get it, and so yeah, he's sort of he's in deep with us in the thick of it.
Yeah. Now tell us, like, you know, like a bird's eye view of what the story is about, because we've been talking about, like, you know, it's, you know, because true crimes is kind of something that everybody knows, might know about the story, but give us like an elevator pitch without any spoilers. You know, what is the story?
Well, the main character, it follows Jason Lee, who's just a regular guy, has a young daughter, he's a very young father. He sets up a restaurant which is failing, and as a result of, you know, people around him, he starts seeing opportunity to try to save his restaurant by getting into some illegal activity, which is probably something, the different levels that a lot of people can relate to. You either are personally involved in something like that, or you know somebody who's been involved like that. The only difference is that Jason takes it a lot further than most people ever go.
And it kind of, you know, expands from there. The scale gets larger and larger. I think Aru is frozen at the moment, but we're still live, so you can still continue to. Do you want to expand some more?
expand some more.
Yeah, I can interview you.
What do I say without saying too much?
I mean, I've got the elevator pitch right here. If you want to, yeah, I'll even read the script out. Oh, okay, we've got some connectivity, but we will hold the fort until Ara can return. Yeah, what else? I mean, I've got it all here. I've got all the elevator pitch.
Well, I'll say one thing is that at the end of this series, when we finally get to the conclusion, it's gonna tie up with something else that nobody else has done before.
It's very far seeing. Well, yeah, I mean, overall, you know, this is the story will progress, and Jason will start. You know, the scale will get larger, and the risks will get larger. But you know, I think for the immediate time being, issue 1 just covers the beginning. But we do begin giving a small preview in the earlier few pages of what's to come, because we think it's a really interesting sort of. We wanted to pose that question of how does a character get here from the very beginning.
Yeah, and I don't think people will expect the place where it ends up.
Yeah. I wonder what else we can say until Ara returns. We can't even see questions on here. This is weird, man. I don't know. What else can we what else can we do? What else can we show? Can't even see questions on here. Yeah, this is a bizarre occurrence. I don't really know. I'm not gonna start doing a stand-up routine.
Yeah.
Okay, I can read you a little bit. Hey!
Don't know what happened. It just crashed on us there for about 5
That's
minutes
all right.
or something.
We held the fort down, and we were, you know.
Thank you.
I interviewed him. He interviewed me. Told a couple of dirty jokes, and
Awesome. I mean, this is like a mature podcast, by the way, so you guys can swear and all that. But
we like to do it creatively and sparingly.
Yeah. Thank you for that. But like, I don't know what happened. I'm like rushing around going, what's going on? And suddenly I realized it was the VPN crashed.
Oh,
yeah.
All right.
And yeah, that's kind of like how I'm like, everything seems to be fine. I paid the bills are paid, everything's out, what's going on? But yeah, so back to the story, what is the story? Apologies for that.
Oh, no worries. I'll say it again. So it follows the main character, Jason Lee.
Yeah.
He's a young father with a brand new business that he just set up. And it shows the struggle he has of trying to keep this shop alive. And he has the option to get into some illegal activity to raise a little bit more money, which is, it's a concept or a story that a lot of people are familiar with, whether it's their own experience or somebody they know. The only difference is that Jason takes it a lot further than you would normally expect. And he also brings very different insight into the way he approaches it, the things that he encounters, because he's a bit crazy.
Not normal.
Yeah.
What's interesting is in issue 1, because we talk about in a pilot, like you want to obviously start at the beginning, but we also wanted to show people that we know where we're taking it. And in the first few pages, we wanted to pose this question to people of how does Jason Lee get to this point. So we actually show four different versions of Jason. One is obviously the restaurateur, this sort of young guy who's struggling with everything, and then he gets an opportunity. One is Jason having just entered into sort of the thick of this underworld. One is a much further Jason, and the last Jason we can't talk about yet. That one you have to get the book to find out about the 4th Jason.
Yeah,
I'll say that much.
I was listening to and here's something in reference to like business people, and it's really easy when we look at like the end result of somebody's life and see, oh, how terrible they became, and we never look at, well, what got them there a lot of times. And like I was saying, we're listening to like what's happening in China a lot, and I was one of the people on the news was like a 35-year-old lady, and she was talking about everybody around her. She said there's a 45-year-old guy who's just lost his job. He's doesn't know what he's going to. There's about 800 people that have been let out of their job situation. So like there's some people are turning into crime, because they've got nothing else, and they don't know, and people are leaning into something else, and I'm thinking, hell, how many other people are going to go into like actually suicide because of that? Like the struggle is real. Like, I mean, because sometimes you just like don't know how that emotion of that loss of identity that comes with having a job and trying to look after maybe some people family, some people without family, maybe you're a solo parent. How does it affect your psyche when you go home and you look at somebody in the eye and you go, I don't know how I'm going to feed you, how I'm going to pay the bill, what do I do? And the struggle that you have in them. One thing about comics that is very cool, which I like, in the dialogue, in the monologue, that you can say, you can put narration there of them telling their story. Like I use something, in a way I use like a diary format sometimes, where it's a diary where they're telling about their, how they got to where they got to, or their inner thoughts. You can hear the thoughts, which you can't do on, you can't do in a movie, or a TV show, where you can, like in film noir, if you do a detective story, you have the guy going, and then I arrived, the femme fatale walked in, and she looked lovely, and I was thinking this. Whereas, like in comics, you can have three kind of things going through there. You can see what's going on the page and have the dialogue. Then you can have the thoughts. Then you also have the third option, which is the narration, where you can, it could be not even be the guy who's, or the lady who's actually as a point of the story or the protagonist, but it could be the antagonist, the bad guy telling the story. And this sort of really leans towards telling a true crime story in a very unique way. That's why I think, seeing it is a kind of a tough thing to do, choosing the right story. So how did you guys choose this to be the story for you guys to tell as a true crime comic book?
Well, I think as soon as we knew about this story, we felt that this is a story that needs to be told. And I'll give a little Easter egg about something people can expect in the comic as well. There's a lot of breaking the fourth wall, where the character very often speaks direct to the reader. And there's going to be an interactive element as well, where people can hunt for clues that will lead them to things like film clips or music that are connected to the story that further expand on what we're trying to tell.
Yeah, I like to say to people, I say like the story chose us rather than we chose the story, because like I said, we've been developing the story for such a long time that we knew it had to be told. And when comics presented itself as this medium that was like, oh, this can work out practically, this can work out creatively, and yeah, we went fully into it, and it just enabled. I thought it was interesting you mentioned things like noir film, because one of the terms we use to describe this is narco noir, which is like this compound term, because obviously narco to do with the narcotic element, but this noir because like you said, where the character kind of narrates things, this story is being told to you by Jason Lee,
right?
So it's it's his story, really.
Now you talk about like the business, like the guy running a business and stuff. Did you guys like look into that whole, because you're trying to get the locations and stuff like that? Did you look at how people work in that environment? Was it a cafe or was it a restaurant that that he had?
It's like a cafe restaurant,
a fast food cafe.
Yeah.
So did you guys like when you're writing this? Did you talk to any of the any of the people at that time? I mean, that are involved in the story, or did you just do it over, you know, kind of like a outsider's viewpoint of like looking at and doing the research?
No, we got to speak to pretty much every single character that's in the story.
Okay, it's fine. I mean, like, you know, there's obviously all these combined things from our own experiences that, you know, that kind of informed, you know, the settings, the processes, you know, especially things like, I mean, for one, you know, we love food, so that also factored into the whole kind of notion of the restaurant cafe. But yeah, like, it was just a story that, you know, was very, I think, very prominent to us. So it was something that we just went, yeah, all the research had been done very intensively, meticulously.
Now, just trying to get some links out for you guys out here. So tell us about when this, you know, when the Kickstarter is going to kick off, and you're going to go to the Melbourne Supernova in April, right?
That's correct. Yeah, so we do plan to launch it on the 26th of March. So that's the last week of March on a Monday. So that way the Kickstarter runs for a week, and then we take to Supernova, you know, with the comic. So that way Supernova is kind of a dual purpose to get people to know about the comic, to sort of, you know, I mean, because even in the local Melbourne scene, we're sort of the new kids on the block. You know, we kind of popped out of the ether, and suddenly it's like, bam, we got Gods Among Men. This is not actually our first comic, but our other comic is a slightly unique case because we didn't sort of throw that into the comics, the local comic scene. That was created as band merchandise, but that's a whole other story. We can go into that if you like, but essentially, yeah, Supernova will be the first introduction of Gods Among Men, and sort of really formally putting ourselves out there in the local scene, to let people know, yeah, this is what we've got, and this is what we do.
Awesome. That is a very cool way to do that as well. I think once, you know, it's in one week, and now you can like push it further by actually having people at the event and going, hey, here's a comic book, and what's a comic? Oh, we're also going to be launching, you know, the series is right now live on Kickstarter, and I think that sort of like is a really cool way for marketing, right? For marketing and promotion. You've got to, like, you know, can take the foil home and you go, well, I want to actually support you as well, and share your link out and all this stuff, because a lot of times that one-on-one connection creates a better fandom than a random sort of like fly by night, you know, kind of like seeing another post on Kickstarter or online.
We love in-person interactions. I mean, I'm always finding I definitely am more of a people person in terms of, like, you know, engaging with people face to face, or even things like, you know, chats like this. And, you know, we found it was a beneficial thing to kind of have these two things help each other out, you know, because I've been told by some people that, oh, you know, it's not advisable to kind of run a Kickstarter and then take it to the convention. But we kind of felt that, you know, the Kickstarter can help with the convention, because you go, oh, you know, we've got other things as well. There's you know, going to be trading cards, and there's going to be hardcover editions. So we're giving more available in the Kickstarter that's different from what we're going to bring to Supernova.
We made sure that we were creating products and tiers that we ourselves would enjoy as fans. So yeah, like what's available at Comic-Con and what's available, Supernova, and what's available on Kickstarter.
Clearly not a comic guy.
Yeah, they're very different things, you know, like you're not going to be able to get the Kickstarter stuff at Supernova. So that's, you know, someone who saw us at Comic-Con would still be interested in some of these other products that they could get access to. Supernova.
Yeah. You gotta let people know the right thing, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's also I think it's beneficial to the Kickstarter to actually be able to show, like, hey, we've got this physical product, we've got this thing that we've taken to Supernova, you know, which is it's a huge event every year. And yeah, we just felt that these two could actually work together and be mutually beneficial.
Yeah, I think I don't understand why would somebody would go, well, don't do that. Because for me, I'd be like, I'll take any opportunity to promote my book anywhere, anytime, right? And something like a captive audience, like a convention, is probably one of the better places anywhere you can, because that's where people get to see you, get to talk to you, get to find out on a one-to-one basis of actually who you are and why they should support it. Because social media doesn't really give you a connection. That there is a parasocial connection, but there isn't a realism to it, in the way of when you try and say, hey, this is my actual physical book that I have actually put my time and effort into, with the artist, with the colorist, and here's a unique piece of work that you can only get at this event. However, if you want to support us on, there is a Kickstarter going, and now that you know us, you can hit us up, and let us know what you think of the book, because by these guys actually having a unique, opportunity to get a release for, for at Supernova, they can also be your mouthpieces as well, your spokespeople about what they thought about the book, and they can say, oh yeah, I like the idea, and they can become now your salespeople as well for your work. So this, I think that's why conventions are very important, for that reason alone, that you're getting real fans. You're not getting so-called social media fans. You're actually getting real fans, and I think that's something that I think everybody should aim at like not just your parasocial relationship fans, but actual real life fans who are outside of your family, right? Because I think you can have all your family supporting you, but actually having a real kind of a reader of comics come and say, right, I'm gonna take this home, I'm gonna read this. Now, and then I'll give my idea about what I think about it. Because I think a lot of times people kind of think that if somebody has an early release, then they're going to spoil it for everybody. But I don't think anybody would do that unless they're a real bad person. Because I know I've said like about 11, 12 reviews for one that we're releasing soon in March, and just saying, let me know what you think, and then I get some good feedback, because now I can change it, add to it, work around it, and move stories around, change if there's any spelling mistakes. I could get that done, because there's a lot of trust between yourself and releasing to somebody you trust early on, because you don't want them to go and spoil the story for readers, because that could also cause you a lack of support, because somebody could go, oh yeah, well, I already know the story, and here it is, and now it's all spoiled, and it's like, you just ruin it for everybody else. But I don't think a lot of people would do that either.
I think one thing I actually am, quite confident in is that I think, let's say when we start to actually release the comic, and, people sort of get their hands on it first, I think anything that anyone might try and spoil might actually generate intrigue, because so essentially the way we're doing it is we're ending the comic on a very special page. Our final page is something quite different, and in my mind, that's the only thing really I can think of that is spoilable. And if anybody were to actually sort of try and spoil it, I feel like that might actually, I'm not encouraging it, but all I'm saying is it's quite a,
it probably intrigue you more.
It might actually intrigue more.
Yeah, I doubt anybody would spoil it, because I think a lot of people realize now how hard it is, especially someone who's going to a convention, understand how hard it is to put together a comic book. It's not like somebody can just go, here's a comic book, right? Because it takes years of developing and stuff. With you guys, like you guys have been looking at this for years to bring it into to tell the story. And now with 2021, it was 2021, right, when you guys connected with Ben?
Yeah, when we first started.
3 years of working, or maybe 4 years, right? 2021 to 24, working and putting this all together. How many issues are for this arc that you're doing for this first story?
My estimate for the first arc is 5 issues. Right. So that's something that I think, as we, sort of, I guess once we sit down and are able to get to issue 2, Then it's going to be a question of pacing, because like we said, the story is practically written. It's just going to be what goes into each issue. So the first arc might be 5, but I don't see it being more than 8. But within this arc, there's a big transformation that happens,
and subsequent arcs are probably longer.
Yeah, I think like I'm working on a story right now called Howler, and like I didn't even have a second issue when I got the artist, you know. So I understand, like, because like a lot of times I actually have the complete story, but because this story was supposed to be written a few years down the line, and then finally get an artist who can do the art that I want, you know, the character style that I want, all of a sudden 4 years later, early, right? And then like this is the first time I've had to go, okay, hold on. While I'm working with him, while he's doing the pages, I'm going, hold on, I need to add a couple of pages here, and back and forth and back and forth. Oh, you need to put a panel here and all those. And I'm going, oh, and I'm like, where the hell's the story going? You know, and then I'm like going, okay, hold on. This is what the first arc will be. 1, 2, 3. Second volume will be this, and third volume will be this. And then you're going, oh, you know what? We released it as a graphic novel. Okay, is that okay with you? Yeah, okay, that's fine. You know, and it's like you're doing all these changes, and a lot of time people don't understand the working process behind the scenes of creating comic until you're doing it. I mean, some can be like, I already have the story all worked out, every page is sorted, and then you find out that like there's other stories that like it needs to build, you need to live with it. And I think this is really cool. You guys have lived with the story for so long. Now you're talking like going back to is it JD, right? Was the
Jason Lee? Yeah.
Jason Lee. So with Jason and the situation there, you don't want to know about the ending or anything like that. When did this actually happen? Like this, you know, this true crime.
It begins in 2008.
Oh
no, 10.
8.
Is it 8?
It's 8. Yeah. Yeah. 2008. It's in the call.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, that's, I guess, chronologically, that's where we start the story.
I can say that the story will end around 2016.
Right.
That's the end of the story.
Yeah.
So that's
it's almost like 8 years, wasn't it? Like, I mean, yeah.
It's a big period. You know, so I mean, one thing is that we will have to sit down for future issues to talk about, you know, obviously you don't show every single, you know, Jason Lee wakes up, he makes a coffee. Well, first Jason Lee doesn't make coffee. But, you know, the hard part for us is that there is a lot of interesting things. So it's also a question of, you know, is it worth omitting that, you know, to make space for something more important, or is this an important moment to include? Things that might seem insignificant, because we will actually even have flashback moments to Jason's past prior to the restaurant Riseburger. And it's interesting because we're able to structure the story that we will flashback when we feel it's appropriate to sort of explain some of the current things, because as in life, you know, your path does kind of dictate your future a little bit, your behavior and psychology.
I mean, for me, I love the idea that this is a true crime story. I like the you know, that sort of element to this, and I like my first comic was a crime drama, right? So writing a drama and a crime drama, and you're trying to make it as interesting as you can. It's not like, you know, there's a fight in every scene. There is not like people blowing up buildings and stuff like that. And so there's a lot more effort that goes into how you tell that story that is of interest to people. That's why I think the art style really draws people in. I mean, drew me in, right? Because it's very unique in how you're telling the story. And let me just bring up this, one sec here. There we go. So there it is. So, you know, when people see this and you go, well, how does this work with true crime? Is it like a not a sci-fi story? Is it like a fantasy ghost, you know, psychological horror, what's going on. And so that's was my question, was like, okay, it's a true crime story about such and such, and but how do you set aside? And you look at you kind of look at the way the details, like this panel here, right? This is probably the top page, right? And you got you got the panel, and you can see there's a lot of emotion there already. And there's for me as a comic reader and as a creator working with artists, I talk to them about like the background. There needs to be a lot of on a larger format, you need to have a lot of details, whereas on a smaller, like a close-ups or mid shots, which this kind of is, like a close or mid shot, you don't have to have that much details in the back. But like here on a wider scene, you can. And I like the idea that this guy, your artist band, is doing a really good job, along with your colorist Wilson, right? Just making it really work. The colors really work. I mean, even though this is only a small panel I'm looking at, it's just, it's just so good, man. Like, I mean, the art here is really good. It really stands out on that. I mean, like, just the emotion and stuff. That's something for me when it comes to comics. I can do superhero comics, I can do fantasy and all that, but for one thing that I'm really looking to do for my stories is to actually have elements of just pure emotion connection between characters. And this is really cool. Like this, just you kind of, it humanizes your character, right? And I think that's just really such a cool little and I think sometimes people like think of that as like a weak point in stories. I think it's like the human part that's really necessary in stories, because I think in this day and age, with us being like the big two being Marvel and DC, all they do is majority 99% is superhero comics. You don't see little elements of actual human connection like this little panel is doing. And the fact that you guys added this to your kit, your promotion piece is amazing. You're just trying to show different levels, and it's just really cool. I think that's pretty awesome way you guys are telling the story as well.
I have to give first off compliments to Ben Sullivan, because on top of being an artist, in many ways he's kind of like our chameleon actor, because when we tell him what the scene is, boom, he gets the expressions. Maybe there might be something small to tweak, but once he understands the tone, boom, he gets it. He gets the expressions. He nails it. It's perfect. And then Wilson comes in and lays this. He obviously, with the visual references, it's great that we work really well. That I don't have to go in and write out a whole thing. He's got the script. He's got the image, and he can put two and two together, and he goes, all right, this is an intimate scene. All right, this is a tense scene, and he'll light it in a way and color it, to also show, all right, this is a different point in time, this is a different emotion. But I like what you said about human connection, because I love the superhero genre, but I love the superhero genre when it's done well. And one of the comic issues that actually really stood out to me was I managed to get my hands on an issue of Frank Miller's run on Daredevil. And one of the best issues that I read was an issue where literally, I think Bullseye's in a coma and Daredevil has a gun, and Daredevil's in a hospital bed. Bullseye's in a hospital bed and Daredevil's there with a gun. And the whole issue just takes place there, and Daredevil just sort of musing in his mind about the events, because Bullseye had killed Elektra, and he's going through all these emotional highs and lows roller coaster. And then it gets to the end, and there's this, the sort of the plot twist. And I was like, this is brilliant. The bottle episode, everything happens in one place. I love when a TV show, or in this case, a comic, a story does that well, because to me, that is like the pinnacle of good writing. Not big action scenes, not lots of colors. It's the understanding of the human condition and psychology.
Yeah, that's another thing for me. Like the idea of buildings blowing up and not worrying what's happening to people around them has always been a pet peeve of mine. It's like, well, if something's blowing up, isn't it something's going to fall on some people? What? Right. Like, it's all the big story and not the little story on the side. with the humans and stuff. So that's why like I said, like I like the human element in stories, because the cool thing about this is that you're, as an indie creative, this is where you're at, right? As an indie creative, you're no longer constrained by some big publisher telling you this is what you can't put in, and you're telling the story that you want to tell with your artist, with your colorist, and you're able to dictate what is happening, how it's happening. However, do you guys, with that in mind, do you guys have anybody looking over the story to kind of like go, hey, this is, this works or this doesn't work, and is this how you want to tell that story, or is there like, is this language working here, or if it's not, do you have anybody like that in the kind of like editorial help that looks over that, or do you guys look over it yourselves? Because the fact that there's two of you guys working on it, it's a very unique situation where you guys can actually check each other's storytelling, right?
I think it's interesting you mentioned this thing, like the benefit of being indie, and that's also why it took so long for us to get this project off the ground, is that we didn't want anybody to, we actually didn't want anyone to dictate how we told this story. Given it's a true crime story, but this is probably the only true crime story I know of that doesn't have an action scene.
Right.
Right? Like there's no gunfights, there's no fight scenes or chases, so which is bizarre when you think about it. You kind of wonder, like, so what's in the story? And I was pretty adamant that it had to be told this way. So if ever it goes off the track, we're the ones that are there to kind of, reel it back in to keep it on track to what it's meant to be.
I mean, we that was that thing as well. You're faced with that challenge of, okay, how do you when there is danger and tension, even though there's not something so explicit, but we start to work in concepts of things like, for example, very relatable sort of tensions, things like financial troubles, things, the dire needs, you have to look after, family, and we present them in ways that sometimes are often scarier than, it's a lot easier to imagine this reality of like, what if my business fails? What if I have not enough money to provide? There's I guess I won't go into too much detail, but there is a moment that's a very simple moment that happens in the comic that really shows this sort of one, light bulb moment of like, oh, okay, this is a physical representation of what it means to, I guess, sort of like run out of your luck, in a way. But yeah, I think we keep each other in check. And what was beneficial about working with Ben was he would provide some of the more sort of technical insight, like obviously with his experience with comics, he'd tell me things where when I go in with the lettering and he'd say, oh, look, generally convention dictates the edge of the bubble shouldn't intersect or shouldn't touch the outer border. And so I'll go, oh, okay, yeah, that's a good point. And so I'd also, because I've got this, insane comic collection. So I would go over and every time I'm reading, I'm kind of studying them to kind of see what's been done. And there'll be times if I see rules broken, I go, oh, okay, cool, I can do that. Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
So
well, that's also like in the sense like of being an indie creator, you can actually break rules, conventional rules when it comes to comics that can't be broken in the mainstream because they have their own set of rules. And I think that's the freedom you get, right? Doing your own thing. People aren't expecting you to do the same thing that everybody else is doing. And you're telling, like I was just thinking in my head, right? That one of my friends who's just, going to think that she's about to come out. So last year I was interviewing him and we're talking about like, why doesn't he pull full stops there, right? And I asked him and said like, he's like, well, that's not everybody kind of like just stops talking, and I'm like, yeah, it's true, and that's the way he want in this world that he's created, this wasteland dystopian futuristic place. They just for his book, that's what he wants to do. And I thought like, because people are going to ask us questions anyway, and he said, yep, that's how I wanted to tell it, and I'm not dictated by anybody telling me how I don't want to tell my story. And and that's what I like about the fact that that in indie you don't have to follow a set of rules. You're allowed to tell a story as long as it's good art, it's good storytelling. Nobody gives an F, right, or S, right? Because
as long as your words are legible.
yeah, and you got to make sure that it's a good story. And if you're a good story, because especially if you're telling drama where dialogue and storytelling is the most important, you're not like just going boom, boom, smash, crash. You know, you're actually having to do really clear dialogue to carry the story through. And I think, you know, I kept thinking like Goldfish, right? Do you remember Goldfish by Bendis? Mike,
Yeah,
I've got it here somewhere.
I've never read it, but I know of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's one of the first. I think it was the first or second story of his that I read, and I actually bought the graphic novel or something, and it's like a true crime story itself, which is what got him into working with Marvel, you know, and Image. I think it was with Powers and so on, and it's a black and white, you know, what was it like? It had to do with like. Was it like the guy gangster? It was like some sort of mob story. I'll have to bring it up later. But it wasn't the first one he did. I think there was two of them. There was Goldfish and another one. And that's how he got started, right? With black and white and comic book, you know, long form graphic novel. It's quite thick. But then he, you know, as you know, he went to superheroes and with Powers and so on. And I looked at his script writing as well. You know, I bought the Powers script writing book, and I was looking at that. I'm like thinking, yeah, if I want to get into comics, let me buy a script book and have a look at it, because I know how a movie and a TV script works. And then I was like, you know what, I'm going to do my own style of script writing. So when people look at any of my artists look at my script writing, they don't see it as like a normal Marvel standard. Mine, you know, it's like it's got a, it's. I'll do a huge, like if I'm setting a page, I'll go huge bit of you know, narrate like a plot panel, who's in there, and then I'll just go blah, 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 speak, and then next one I go, this happens, speak, like, you know, 2 sentences, because I know the artist already knows who's involved in that without having to every page, you know. And I think a lot of people are stuck in like, hey, we have to do it this way, we have to do it that way. But really, as long as your artist is clear between the two of you what you're trying to do, it doesn't matter how you do it, as long as the idea is there. So how do you guys, you know, plot out the story like that? How did you guys go about writing your dialogue, your script for Ben to be able to, you know, work along with?
I think from what's funny is I don't know what the rules are anyway. So I just know the story, and I tell the story to Aaron, and he figures out how to put it into a concise form for Ben to understand. And then when they show it back to me afterwards, I can go, that's right, that's not right, that's... So yeah, I don't know the rules.
That thing that was beneficial is that Josh and my working relationship had already developed, I guess. We kind of got this synchronicity figured out, you know, since we first started. I mean, in the past, there was a lot of like you telling me, and I'll come up with a script, and you go, it's all bad, and I'll be like, but no, I think you know, once we started figuring out that rhythm, now with Ben, you know, adding this third component in, we really managed to, you know, have a good rhythm. And I will say one thing, there was a point I wanted to mention earlier about sort of this comic style approach to the subject matter, is that even though it's got all these sort of grounded dramatic things, you know, no explosions, no fight scenes, but it was very much a case of, because it is true crime, is a true story, we wanted to let people see events that were, you know, real and confronting, and be able to sort of be almost like a spectator, like a hovering spectator in the moment, without having to be there, experience the risk, experience the danger. And that's sort of what this comic enables people to do in the long run. Which I guess in terms of the comic form, because the story, I guess, is so different, we definitely wanted to apply sort of formatting rules that were a little bit more conventional. We do break convention here and there, but that way, I guess people can look at it and go, oh, this looks like, you know, a regular comic book. But once you start reading it, you start to see, oh no, there's something different about, you know, what's beneath the veneer.
I've just wanted to grab this, right, so I could show you guys like what I'm like, you know, when you're looking at when you're talking about like how, you know, someone like Bendis writes a script, right? It looks like this, right? And you kind of like think, well, that's not how I would do it, and that's not how I do scripts, right? So I'm getting clear, you know, where it's like my dialogues are in the middle, right? Like center. So I use a program called you know, what's it called? It's called Kilt X, and I've used it for about since 2004, right? So 20 years I'm using it, and I've never wanted to use anything else because there's all these other scripts, you know, writing form, you know, apps and all that. But because I'm used to that for 20 years, I'm okay. You know, that's the only one I use because I'm okay with that. But it's not the way everybody else uses it. And I think with you guys, you know, telling a story that's like unconventional because it's, and here's the thing, right? We know there's a lot of dramatized crime stories coming out of you know, the mafia scenes and all that. There's one been recently on TV. I can't remember what it's called. It was a series about it's like brothers or something that came out, and
familiar. Yeah, I think it was an Aussie. I think it was an Aussie true crime.
Yeah, do you know the name of that? Like, I think it was around about 2000. I think it was 221 or something, or 21.
It sounds familiar. I feel like it was maybe like last year or the year before that I saw a couple trailers for it on Stan or something.
You do like a pop up here, crime TV show, because there has been a lot coming out of Aussie, and so like even in New Zealand, right? We've had in the past, we had one of our like dramatized, you know, like Westies. What, I can't remember the name of it. Hey, Ross, if you're still watching, do you know what was the name of like the Westies Auckland-based TV show that made a couple of the people really famous, and even Carl Urban, I think, was in it as well, who's actually on The Boys right now. So there was yeah, it made a lot of people really what's it called? I think something like the urban Auckland scene. But people love true crime dramas. I mean, you know, like I watch a few every now and then because I like biopics, I like histories. You can't remember, right? Yeah, they'll call it Westies, like it's a crime family, and like it was like about 19 or maybe 2000s it came out, and it had the mother with the blonde hair, larger than life.
Was it Animal Kingdom?
Yeah, no, that's the American one. Animal Kingdoms, I think, is the American one. But yeah, people like that whole thing, you know, with the Dharma story came out, you know, and for me personally, I don't like true crime serial killer stories, but I love like normal people, you know, sort of things, because I find like all you're doing is serialize, you know, not serializing, like
normalizing.
Yeah, normalizing mass murder. It feels like you're kind of like, and every time I see another friggin' what's it called, Dharma or Jack the Ripper story, I'm like, how many do we need? You know? But then I see you guys write something that's local, that's like in your, you know, that's in your country. I find that more interesting than I would like to, you know, because it's something a bit more interesting to me than say another 10,000 Jack the Ripper interpretation story, live action drama, you know, story, because it's just, how many times can you tell the same friggin' mess, you know, killing of prostitutes, right, and disemboweling and all this stuff, like, over and over again. It's like it gets to a point it's exploitative. But the fact that you guys are telling a story that's in your neck of the woods, it's like, you know, as we say, but also unique to your country, but not unique in the way of a businessman struggling with finances, trying to keep a small business going, you know. And I've been a small business owner, so I understand the struggles there, because, you know, when do you say enough, and when do you step away, and when do you quit? Like, I nearly went bankrupt with my comic shop, and I was like, you know, do I go bankrupt and struggle, or do I just go, put my hands up, and go, yeah, I'm just going to step away from this, even though it's my dream. And, you know, and it, like, for me as a business owner, right? Thanks, Ross. Yeah, outrageous fortune, right? So, and that was huge. Made a lot of people famous all around the, you know, for Kiwis, famous and as actors, just like Neighbours did for a lot of the younger crew back in the day, right? For Aussie. And so, you know, I remember like going, okay, I could keep struggling and keep my dream alive and eat, you know, take home less pay every week, or just go, this is it. I'm just going to stop and put my hands up, sell off whatever at like half price, as a little, you know, just get rid of as much of the stock as I can. But the other side of the coin is, the financial side was fine. Okay, I can deal with it. But then the emotional side made me go into 2 years of depression, right? And so that's why I understand, you know, when you guys say, hey, this is the story about a guy with a small business and how, you know, what it leads into. I go, I understand it, because like many people, like thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, business owners around the world, they have to make the same choice sometimes of, what do I do? And for me, it was like 2 years of depression, you know. And then when I came out of it, I was like, what do I do now, right? I can't just be moping and moping and moping. And it was like, okay, I'm going to go and be involved in my community, get into comics, get back into what I wanted to do. And I think the struggle that you guys, you know, the fact that you guys are telling this amazing story about this real person and his struggles, I think it's very endearing as a story. And I don't mean that in like a, you know, like downplaying it. I mean endearing in the sense that it's a good story. And the fact that you guys are bringing this as a new, not a new idea, but like a new thing to the current indie comic scene, right? Because this is the first one I've heard where it's a true crime story in the comics. So it's like on its own, it's unique right now in the comic scene, you know. And I think that's a plus for you guys, because not everybody out here wants buildings blowing up and wants people, you know, getting punched through walls and all that, or, you know, or bounce around with aliens. There are people who do enjoy a good down-to-earth story. And you could, like, especially, you know, when I think with manga, people like slice of life stories. Like, I mean, like I was saying to the guys, you know, on here, it's like, I watch teenage girls and preteen girls go fishing in an anime about girls fishing in an after-school club in an anime, right? That wasn't a manga first. And I thought that was really cool, because when I was their age, I too was taking my sister out fishing, you know, with our bow, you know, with our little, you know, line, or, you know, with this hook and sinker, or like friggin' what, I can't even remember now what that's called, you know, the rod, you know, fishing rod at the harbor or on the rocks. And I thought that's sort of, not everybody wants things blowing up, cars crashing, fight scenes, because you're going to find that a lot of people are going to come in kind of an older scene that will be like, and I don't think, you know, that's not downplaying it, because they've also moved on from, like, you know, superheroes, and they also want something a bit more interesting, but they still love comics, right? So rather, you know,
I would use the term, that was one thing as well that we included sort of in our, you know, elevator pitches. We are also trying to target a more, I guess, sophisticated reader, because, you know, when we started thinking in the mindset of comics, we went, okay, look, what does the market have a lot of? The market has a lot of, you know, superheroes, got a lot of action, you know, fantasy, sci-fi, all that stuff. and we kind of went, okay, so where does Gods Among Men fit in all of this? And it's funny because one of the hardest things that we had to do was when we said, okay, what comic is it like? We actually had to start reaching out a bit outside of, obviously there's some of the more obvious crime things, like we mentioned things like Sam and Twitch, which Brian Michael Bendis did write on. One of the other ones we mentioned was Stumptown by Greg Rucka. But one thing actually that I put in there as well was I said Spawn the Undead specifically. It was a mini series. I believe the writer on there was Brian Holguin. And one thing I liked about it, even though Spawn, it's about this sort of like, supernatural, anti-hero kind of guy. A lot of the way that miniseries was structured was, it was actually more about individual people and their stories. And it goes into very realistic human situations. And Spawn's almost like, you could almost interpret it, Spawn as this like apparition, this part of their psyche that appears, who doesn't actually have real effect or have very little real effect. And I really enjoyed the writing of that. And so we actually feel like, it's got similarities to the way they talk about stuff like that. So yeah, do something different, fill the void in the market, I guess.
Yeah, and I think, and that's, I mean, I kind of wonder like, why this is why I think the mainstream is dying, and not dying, like it'll never die, right? Because like even thinking about that, the mainstream will always be there, and we need the mainstream, right? And I mean like the top 5, right? Like Marvel and DC, you always need that because they're the ones who are basically are producing and and like access, right? And that's helping the people keep aware of what's happening in the comics. And so I'm always, I'm never going to like downplay that because we need that. But we're, in the indie comic scene is where you can basically not only just test, but also cut your teeth, right? I think a lot of people don't realize that this is where you get to cut your teeth at how you can learn to be a better storyteller, because even like each issue you put out, you're actually becoming better at your, at your storytelling. And even the artist is going to change, learn from issue to issue. The colorist is also going to learn from issue to issue because everybody's upskilling as they go along. And I think a lot of times people don't realize that not everything is going to be a hit straight away. And I think a lot of people are so convinced that like, I'm going to make it work. And if it doesn't work, I'm out, and I think, that at this point, you're able to develop a story, develop a following, and you're able to do it in a way that there's, especially with indie, especially with Kickstarter, especially with the crowdfunding scene, that has been a huge help to people who never had a chance before to tell a story, right? Especially in comics. And even like, we're going to go into talking about you guys with the music scene, but being able to come in and like, not only just go, hey, we're thinking about making a film, but that's like in the hundreds of thousands. But now we can go into comics, yet then we can also go to Kickstarter, yet we can also help people get people to help us fund it, yet we still don't have those people telling us what we can do and what we can't do, what we should do, what we shouldn't do with the story we're trying to tell. How has that, like that freedom that has allowed you to like just do it your way, been for you as storytellers?
For myself, I wasn't very good in school because once again, I'm not saying that there was too many rules, but I recognize the importance that rules need to be there. So if you don't have any rules, then you don't know what you can bend and what you can bring. I understand the structure has to be there. I just didn't fit into any structure. And I want to segue a little bit actually and talk about, so we have another comic that we produce that has taken a complete
Rule breaking.
It's broken every comic book rule. Like, we're not doing it in a conventional way at all. And that is a superhero comic. But again,
an anti-hero comic.
Yeah, it's more fictional, and it's got powers and all that. And what that is really, you know, when most bands get started, they print T-shirts and they sell it at shows to raise money.
Yeah.
I had been down that road before, and I realized it was an absolute black hole expenditure.
Mm-hmm.
So when Aaron suggested, hey, since we're working on a comic, why don't we make a comic as merchandise for the band based off the band members?
Yeah.
And we said, okay, let's develop that. Let's work on that. And we didn't want to do it in a conventional way at all. The goal was we printed 150 copies to begin with. So they were limited.
We numbered them, put a little sort of limited box as the first printing.
And we took it to shows to start selling it. And that was about 2 months ago.
What was that? No, October we started.
October?
Yeah.
Okay, so what is that?
With a show, what, once a month?
Yeah, about 3 months ago, one show a month. And I think we're down to about 20 copies left now. Which showed us that, you know, there really was an interest in that. So as soon as Gods Among Men is out, we will be working on, that's the, yeah.
Yeah, that's the top left, the Anna comic. So.
Is it Anna you talking about here?
Yeah,
yes.
This one here?
So that is our other, well, technically our first comic. Yeah, that was something that we wanted, you know, when we kind of broke the rules on that one, where we were kind of, oh, thank you kindly.
Love it. It's really cool. I mean, like I'm all about like comics and art. Like if the art draws me in, I'm in, right? Because
Ben Sullivan again doing his amazing work.
I love the perspective on the middle one. Like this is something I've been talking to one of my artists. It's like his perspective is what drew me into his art style, right? Because a lot of people don't really think about perspective when it comes to stuff. They just place things there. And so you can look at here, like he goes on an angle, right? And that helps him really decide how the sizes of the characters and where they fit in. So this is cool, man. So you said you had 20 left?
Yes. So out of 150 copies that we made, we're down to about the last 20.
How much are you selling those for?
So we've been selling them for $15. So that's kind of where we broke the rules on both sides, where for the most part, comics generally don't sell for that much unless there's some kind of special edition.
Oh, because this is also like our preview, so it's only 6 pages long.
Yeah,
right.
It's a 6-page comic, you know, which is the positive thing is we've had people read it and they went like, oh, it feels like longer, you know, like there's more in there. But for us, it was that we knew we weren't going to try and sell it as a comic at conventions, at in comic shops or whatever, because it sort of didn't fit in that category. Whereas when we took it and treated it like band merchandise, suddenly it was like we've got some of the cheapest merch in town. You know, because nobody else had, first off, nobody else had a comic book, and then nobody else had had merchandise. Anything that was down to $15 was something like a stubby holder or like a keychain. And we said, well, we've you know, comic book, and we figured because we, you know, have gone in deep into this comic world, we said we're not just going to create, you know, a gimmick or a one shot. I remember that day that I said to Josh and Anna, who Anna obviously the lead singer of the band, I said to them, I said, I can see this being a comic. And they were on their way out to the shops and they said, okay, let's think about it. Let's just sort of, you know, brew it in the mind for a bit. They went out, came back 20 minutes later. Josh looked at me and he went, I've got it. I was like, what? You've got what? He said, the whole concept. And so you can see, again, the wellspring idea, then the facilitator, I pull out my notebook. All right, let's start writing, you know, how it works.
Yeah. So we are going to start work on a full issue that this will be after Gods Among Men is out, and we'll get to work on the full issue, and they'll be coming real soon this year.
Right. So tell us about the music side of this thing, since we're on here, right? Good segue to get into that. So I don't know what you guys know about me, but like I also like 2 years, you know, like end of 2022, I did I co-managed a convention which allowed me to get a couple, you know, a grand in the pocket. So I went and decided to buy myself a bass, which I hadn't owned a bass for at least since I was like about 20 years old, because I used to, you know, when I was in my younger years, in my teens, right, late teens, I used to play bass for a punk band as well as like, you know, later on a youth band. And so then, you know, and guitar later on, like in the 90s, so on, in 2000s. But I've always loved the bass as an instrument. And so I ended up picking up that one bass I always wanted, but I never could afford as a teenager, right? You know,
Yeah.
and because I rather spend $60 on comics and albums and cassettes as a teenager in the 80s, late 80s, than to go and spend about you know, $700 to $1,000 on just the bass itself. So last year, like man, it's gone too fast. End of 2022, having done this job, I slowly paid off a Jackson black bass that I've always wanted, because Mustaine at that time, bigger than, you know, still #1 band in the world for me, used to play Jackson.
Nice.
Yeah, and so I ended up, so that's what I do 20 minutes almost every night before I go to bed, you know, work on riffs. So for me, music has been as much a part of my life as has comics, but comics came first. You know, as an 8-year-old kid, you know, you don't think about music, you just listen to music. You don't think about playing it unless you've got somebody in your family who's actually going to say, hey, dad's a musician, so go and pick up that guitar and start playing it. And one of the things, and that's kind of like a huge, people don't realize that parents have a huge influence when it comes to kids actually learning about you know, learning on playing music and stuff. And one of the people I've been watching recently is this this young girl. Let me just bring it up. And her dad, and just a support. And this is in Vietnam, by the way, right? So I think she's called Nene Royale. So I'm going to bring this up and show you, spell the name right. And so every night, that one, yeah. So every night, Nene will go on and do a concert in front of, like, live, and perform at this marketplace. And let me make sure the volume's right here. And she will go out there and play in front of people, and it's live streamed, right, on her on a YouTube channel. And she'll play. Oh, hold on. Let me pop out of there. It's annoying me. Excuse me. So we'll set up this whole segue into music in a sec. So I saw, like, so for me, I get excited by young kids getting into anything artistic, right? That's the same reason we're doing the convention scene here, with, you know, with Plunge convention locally here in Whangarei. We've done it for the last 5 years. Taking a break this year, you know, because I need a bit of you know, what is it called? Sabbatical.
Rest. Yeah.
Yeah, a bit of rest, right? After 5 years in a row, you kind of like, okay, I need a break. So that's Anna there. I'll get to Anna. Thank you for that. So watching Nene, it's been recent, like it's only been the last couple of months. It came up, I think it just popped up on my Facebook page. I mean, not, sorry, YouTube homepage. And because music has been part of my life as long as I can remember, my nephew is like the one that we just played before we got on here. I started putting this on like a year ago or something. I heard him play, and he said, I've done this. And I said, well, why don't you share with the world, right? Why don't you get it out there on YouTube? Why don't you get it out there on Bandcamp? Let people know how good you are, and let them decide for, you know, if they are interested in your music. And so I was quite excited when he finally did it. And so he's put out about 6-7 songs on YouTube, and he's able to do that. But then this thing came across as well. And I watched this girl, you know, and it was like in a mall setting. And then I kept, you know, following through. And then I see her, she's performing live at this young age. I think she's about 13 or 14 here. And, you know, and her whole thing is that she's learning English better and be able to, you know, be able to create music. And she does like covers and, you know, and so on, of music that I, as a kid, would never think of doing, like as a music. So let me play some of this, and I think I'm not sure. Yeah, so this is Vietnam, right? Forget, and this is just like a couple of days ago.
Right.
Now, one so one of the things about her is that she's actually got fans all over the world now.
Mm.
By you know, that people have just been able to see her because, I mean, while they're traveling overseas to Vietnam, because they've seen her on YouTube and stuff, they'll go to the market, right? They'll go and spend money there, and she's become like this local icon, right? Pop star because of her talent. Because, and if you look at the equipment there, that's a lot of expensive equipment that her parent has put in there. But not only that, there's also the fact that people are watching, are donating. You know, what is that called? Leaving, you know, I don't know what they call that when you're busking, right? Leaving a couple of bucks. And
Yeah.
they people, because, you know, she's got a wide repertoire, you know, as you can see, the crowd, they're not, you know, Vietnamese, right? So they're from all over the world. There's Russians there, there were Europeans there, Americans, and she's doing stuff like System of a Down, like chop suey. I'm like, how? You know, that takes a lot of effort to do chop suey, right? The way that was this dude? What's his name?
Serge Tankian.
Yeah, yeah, and he lives up the road, up in Kerikeri over here, right? A couple,
Oh, really?
Really?
towns over. Yeah, in New Zealand. He lives in New Zealand. He's got a vineyard.
Oh wow, no way.
And one of my friends, like book I pulled out, he's actually met him. He just saw, oh, he's walking down the road. So he's actually lives up here now in New Zealand. But watching these young kids get support from their families is what really I think is amazing. And I think one of the things I really, when we do our conventions, that's one thing I want to impress upon our adult family members that come, their guardians, parents, that listen, if the kid is interested, and by kid I mean girl or daughter, you know, boy, if they're interested at whatever age, just get them a pen and paper or cut them a pencil and go. If you see them, just put it in front of them. Go spend a couple of bucks and let them decide if that's what they want to do. And if they decide not to, hey, don't worry about it, right? But at least they got to cut their teeth and have a chance at trying something out. And but you look at this young girl here, Nene, right? Like I was saying, there's equipment here, and because she's honed her skill, and her dad's been, you know, like her family's been supported. I mean, she's got a little sister, and there's about 2 other little kids with siblings there. But that's allowed her to now support her family through her music as well, as her parents have supported her, right, with the busking and stuff. And now she's there every night, just about, I don't know, 3-4 nights a week at the market as the entertainment, you know, because she's at that level, as she's grown to that level, to be able to show their music thing. And so with that, I'm just going to, you know, like I mentioned earlier, I had my nephew, right, before do his song, and then we'll move into Anna and your guys' band. So, you know, and then like having my, you know, at the start of this now, I start as, you know, because he did it, I now have to go, you know, I said to him the other week, I said, hey, can I use your music, right? As rather than using somebody's royalty-free music, how about I use your music at the start of my stream, because this is now me paying back, because I got you to go put it on online. Now I get to use it, right? And then to show people that, hey, this is my nephew and this is his talent. And it's totally different to what Nene's doing. Nene's into metal, playing guitar, whereas Josiah's writing original songs, you know, with his band and performing sometimes with his older sister, Ella, who's like the actual person who's the name of the character, who actually named a character in my superhero comic, Incredi-Girl, right? She named, you know, and so I wrote the comic book for her so she could have a female superhero, and when she was like about 7. So, you know, I get to use his music, you know, and you get to his. Let me just play a bit of that, and then we'll move over to. want to grab this. Now,
Oh, the loudest days are still
hearing somebody else
quiet,
get sick like this, I'm like, what the hell?
but they're easier with you. Well, that's what you told me.
So now let's pop over to Anna, and now thank you for that link, by the way. I really appreciate that. And let's talk about the band, because, like, you know, this is and how you guys, you know, got together. And because this is, like I said, it's another form of creativity. Arts is like such I think would be such a gray kind of world without the arts and without creative people, you know, because music, paintings, sculptures, toys, comic books, novels, TV, you know, pop culture and everything that encompasses is such a great way to, I don't know what it is. Without it would be so dreary without storytelling and stuff like that. And with music, it's another form of storytelling. So tell us about how you guys got in. I'm going to play a song first, right? And then we'll get you guys to talk about that.
Days have come and gone. Times and nights and less on. So far
We
away.
talk now, or I'm not sure.
Hold on.
No, go ahead.
We are kings, grace of wrath, a crown of thorns, a burning rose. Do you know the path that you chose? Too many times I have complained. Too many lies where I've died. I'm still asleep when I'm awake. But this one's all you can take. Just close your eyes, look inside, and it's there that you'll find me. Burning flames, dreams to life. Sorry, Lord, for my demise. Stay aside, no more lies. Try as I may, I cannot die. You have my lies, will transpire. So watch me as I rise. A thousand brides.
Awesome. I love the hooks, man.
Thank you.
All right.
I want to jump in there, and this video is probably a great example as to why the comic got made. And I'll let Josh explain this, but the band's look.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when we put this band together, you know, everyone has such a distinct style about them that I think perfectly suits the comic medium.
Yeah.
And yeah, we created these fictional backstories for each character, and it kind of explains, you know, why are they in Mars.
I was because, like, I'm a huge, like, I mean, metal fan, right? So I was listening to it because I wanted to see if this is a music that I could get into, and the hooks work. I was listening to the lead guitar, and like I was picking up, like, you know, and I like, and then like just the what I call the bridge break, right? You know, it's just it works, and I like and like a lot of music right nowadays, doesn't work for me, and so I just go back to what I enjoyed in the past, right? So but this, I like the concept. I love the concept idea, and I see why you mean it. Why, why you'd create a backstory for everybody, and there's a mask, and then when we looked at the other artwork there, they all wore the mask and stuff. And so tell me, as like a pitch, like what was the idea behind setting up the band? How did the band come together? Because we never had anybody in here who does comics and also has a band, right? So how did the band get started? How did Anna get started?
So Anna's been, and myself, we both been writing and performing for a very long time, but separately. I had my own band called The Nation, and Anna was doing stuff as a solo artist and working as a performer. And finally we decided, because my band, the members live in Singapore,
Right.
so I was not able to continuously do the band. Like, we couldn't play shows, we could only record. And Anna wanted to do something where she could go out and perform and really have a proper go at it. So in the end we said, let's work together and we'll start something new. And we both love heavy music, even though Anna is more inclined towards pop music. So it really was a marriage of the two. If you take the singing and the melodies out, if you just listen to the backing music, it's pretty heavy.
Yeah.
There's a lot of elements of even black metal music and drumming.
Yeah.
So that was a really interesting juxtaposition where it was new. Like, can this work? Can you play such heavy backing music but with more pop orientated vocals? And once we started working on it, we realized, I think it works. And that's something that I understand. You're probably the second person this week who brought up modern music to me.
Yeah.
And I too do not listen to a lot of modern music because I feel they shied away from a lot of things which maybe they consider old-fashioned now, but they were things that were of value that they have kind of neglected. Things like hooks, songs being based on riffs. I think it's really important that there's a lot of focus now in this in the social media age on flashy things. So like myself as a guitarist, there's a lot of stuff that's designed for Instagram and TikTok, where it's 15 seconds of very flashy playing.
Yeah.
But I asked myself, like, at the end of that 15 seconds, can I remember the melody? And I get bored watching videos like that. It's interesting for maybe about 10 minutes. And then after that, it becomes the same thing. So when we write for Anna, a lot of consideration is placed on, people need to be able to remember your melody and sing it straight away.
I like using that term. How singable is your solo? I think some of the best classic metal and rock songs, you can sing the solo. Yeah,
I think it's like thinking like that way, like because I think this week I've been listening to a lot of Iron Maiden, right? Because I was listening to the Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, and I think somewhere in there I had like the one with I think it was like the Trooper or something. And so it's two different albums playing at the same time, and what you call it, like randomly through each other's song. And a lot of that, like, and Seven Sons from like 1988, and I still can enjoy the whole, what is it called? The Evil That Men Do, right? It's like that's just like, and the Evil That Men Do, only the good. What is it like? The evil.
The Evil That Men Do goes on and on.
Yeah, and it's like the only the good die young, and the evil seem to live forever. And it's like if you don't have a hook song lyric or whatever that remains in your head, and especially with melody, I've listened to a lot of like new music that I don't even remember. Like you said, like 10 minutes later, I can't remember any of the songs later on. Whereas I can remember these songs because, you know, they stood out to me and I could remember them. And I think that's why when I was listening to this Ouroboros song, I could, like, you know, get into it with the rhythm, with the bridge, with the lead as well. And it kind of reminded me of Evanescence, you know, back in like about, I think it was about 2000, mid 2000s when they came out. It's kind of like you could understand why that worked, because like the music was very heavy, right? Yet, oh wow, is that they don't like? That's weird. Like, so they whoever owns your music basically stream struck us for copyright music. It's probably Sony again. Sony has a tendency to
Yeah.
strike.
Well, our songs are, we're not with Sony, but they are distributed by Sony.
Yeah. Sony is one of the, like, the, when it comes to like especially to Facebook, Sony struck my nephew's song, yet he's not even done anything with Sony, you know, and they do it every time. I'm like, you know, then they'll release it like an hour and a half later, right? It'll be like instantly, and so it's like hour and a half later, you're letting my stream go on. It's like by that point, it's no point. But you know, but then again, we have a live stream and we can like go back and fix it if there's other stuff. But thank you, Ross, for that. But yeah, it's weird how like that also works. Like you can like have it on YouTube, yet you can't play it off YouTube, or even YouTube will copyright strike you for it. But anyway, we got to hear a bit of it, and I'm quite glad we did. And so how did you go? Like you said, you had another band. Now tell us a bit about that band, and we'll talk about how Anna got formed, right?
Well,
what was that band called, by the way?
That band was basically me and some childhood friends that we've been playing together since we were kids. And when I moved to Australia, of course, the band kind of broke up.
Yeah.
But we still tried to keep it going. We tried to record, but it's hard, you know, like we only ever played one show live together. And I wanted to really pursue it, and it just wasn't possible. So I think eventually that frustration, letting that go and moving on to do something new together with Anna, you know, a lot of people say, you guys should have done this from the start. Like, it just makes sense for the two of you to work together.
Right.
But it was a process, you know, we needed to get to that point. And eventually when we did, I guess both of us are very driven to do it. So we put insane hours of work into the band. I mean, the band's only about a year old.
Right.
But yeah, a lot's been happening together with the comic, a lot of shows. It's been moving at a pretty good pace. We're very happy with that.
Yeah.
I really like sort of because I've been sort of a part of you know, in the early days I was a little bit spectator, a little bit sort of, you know, helping out here and there, and really seeing the band grow, and then starting to really sink my, you know, I'd help, you know, share things and, you know, assisting here and there. But then when it came to things like the comic, like a lot of it came from seeing this band come together. And what was so awesome was, you know, like Josh mentioned before, everybody obviously had a different look, different style, but they also had a different style of music, which they brought. And would you like to explain what the genre?
Someone asked us, like, what do you call your music? So it's almost it's a bit of, you know, I'm trolling a little bit with, you know, how there's so many subgenres these days.
Yeah.
Back in the day, you just said metal, and then from metal it became thrash metal, death metal, black metal. So I said, you know, let's just really lean into it. So we call our style progressive symphonic black popcore. But the reasoning for that was that those were the different elements that each member brought to the band. Oh yeah, you found a live clip.
Yeah, I'm just going to play that at a bit faster rate, so hopefully we can have some background thing on the back there. But I just found this one. So, so how did you guys form Anna? Like, how did that all come about? Because, like you just said, it's been around for about a year. But what was the process of, you know, how did you guys come together on this project?
Well, at the start, it was just myself and Anna. We had a lot of these songs written out just acoustically. Just, you know, but I didn't want to do like a duo and play just an acoustic guitar. So I said, you know, we need to put a band together. And, you know, one by one, we found our drummer first, and then he brought the keyboard player, and the bassist was somebody I had, you know, kind of been stalking for a while because I really wanted him in the band. And yeah, once we got this group together, it was just a matter of playing and building that chemistry and realizing that we played really well together.
I really enjoyed seeing, on top of everyone being so sort of unique in their style, everybody was so capable and they kept pushing each other to sort of go further. And it was funny because at one of the rehearsals, they kind of started egging each other on, and it started to morph into this almost very prog Dream Theater-esque song. And what's great is that with the presence of Anna there, she kind of helps to rein them in as well. Because I think the pop element that Anna brings really makes the music not too alienating, because I love prog, but prog's very alienating. It's like you're in or you're out, you know? Whereas, you know, when I look at it, I see, you know, the songs of Anna to be able to capture, you know, it tugs at, you know, your emotional side or your technical side in some way or another. It doesn't matter who you are. I like to describe it as it's metal you can headbang to, but also dance to.
Right. It's sort of like kind of like a what would you say, like a Poison crossed over with Whitesnake with a female vocalist, right? You know,
Something
so
like
a bit more technical.
Yeah. There's a lot of cross I don't know, mixed fabrics, I guess you can say it. Like I'm a big fan of drums, and their drummer Cleveland, he's from Panama, and so he's a crazy technical player, you know, very capable. But I've always found that a lot of metal drummers, sometimes they forget the importance of groove and rhythm. And he really gets the two worlds, you know, like he's got crazy technical parts, but he understands, he's got beats that do make you want to, you know, dance at, like you're at the club kind of thing.
When I think of like groove, like when you're talking about that, like there's a song that basically got me into Soundgarden. I think it was like Jesus Christ Post, right? Like when it's I think it was Rusty Cage. I wanna break my rusty cage and run. Dun, 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 dun. You know, that bridge, sort of like, you know, that grind. And I think a lot of people forget that sort of hook, and that sort of like there's a rhythm to that. And now it's like music's like just one tone, just go to the like that all the way through, rather than like a bit of down, bit of up, and like getting people into an emotional journey. Whereas before it used to be like taking you on a journey, where now it's like, yeah, we're just gonna go that way. And like one of the worst things that could happen to music happened last year when a band, famous band, right, lost their computer, right? And that was it. It's like, we can't play. I'm like, is this where we're at in the new world thing when it comes to music? You guys cannot play as a band live without a computer, you know, without your discs, which just basically means that you rely upon the technology aspect of your music that you're creating as a band more than you guys as musicians as a band. And that sort of like kind of exposed the whole so-called new era of music, which is kind of sad, because you know, the band, I heard one of their songs, I think it was Frankenstein's, and I thought like I really loved it. But then to like have that same band come across, oh, we can't play live without a computer, right? Or these discs that got stolen. It's like, well, that just shows that you guys don't trust yourselves as musicians to create the same sounds on stage. Why would you put so much elements of technology into your music if you can't play that live? You know, it's like Kiss doing friggin' you know, Kiss still trying to make millions on stage by doing computer backup vocals, right? It's like, just stop. You made your billions, right? Just stop. You don't have to do this. But it's like we want to play forever. It's like, but you can't, right? You just can't. So stop. You know, it's like it's like when they were rolling out Stan Lee in his 90s, you know, in his wheelchair to sign shit. And I'm like, please stop exploiting him.
Just let the man be old.
You've eaten like half, you know, his whole adult life. Now just let him go, you know, not put him out to pasture, but actually let him enjoy the last few years of his life in peace. And it just feels like nobody wants to you know, give up anymore, or like actually really be, you know, like when I'm saying like when I'm lying on my bed, because usually I'm just lying with acoustic, you know, nothing plugged in the middle of the night, strumming away on my you know, on picking away on my bass, and it's just I'm trying to get rhythm right. It's got to work. It's got to do sound good to me acoustically, even before I put the friggin', you know, lead in, because whatever I'm doing, I'm never going to play in front of people until I'm ready to, you know, if it works for me, you know, if I get my timing right and all that, so that I'm not going to rely on somebody just having to plug my, you know, that if you know, if the power goes off or something goes wrong with one amp and I plug it into another amp, it's fine still. You know, it's like I don't have all these fuzzers and all that to make it work. However, I love that, right? And I think that part of technology, part of like pedals, is the fucking almost awesomest thing to me that has ever happened to music. You know, where you can have this amazing sound that can come out, but still, you still got to be able to play the friggin' instrument. And I think that's cool. And that's why I was listening to your music right at the start first, to see like, is it just another one of the like, you know, modern bands, or is it something a bit more stylish and uh, bit more that stands out, right? That's actually a band that plays, you know, not someone that's got like a, you know, backing tracks or something going on. Because
No tracks, no clicks.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
we don't use any tracks or clicks. Another reason is because there's a very spontaneous and organic element to our live show. Like certain songs, I don't even have pre-parts that, you know, that are written, set in stone. And every time we go out, it's a little bit of, oh, what am I going to play tonight? Sometimes when it lands, it's perfect. Sometimes it doesn't. You know, you just hope that when somebody in the crowd's filming and going to throw the video on YouTube, you nailed it that night.
yeah,
But that,
yeah,
I love that. You know, it's kind of, to me, it's like watching somebody walk the tightrope at the circus with and without a safety net.
yeah. That's why you go to watch live bands, because you want to see how good they are. As they do they sound as good as they do on their records, if they have a record, right? Because it's all, or they put out a music video, are they doing it live? Like recently, I hadn't been out to a live band for ages, and I went and saw Shepherd's Rain, right, a New Zealand band. I think they just toured Aussie late last year, and so before they went over there, I was able to see them here, and they came across my Facebook, and I was like, who's this? And like I went and checked it out straight away. Within 24 hours, like within like a couple of hours, I was like buying the ticket, going to see them, because it's a thrash metal band, it's a New Zealand band, and they play really good. And I went and saw them, you know, and I got signatures and everything. And now I got to get the freaking record, because I just kept getting distracted by not getting the record or the CD. But seeing a band perform live is, you know, as a fan of somebody's, you know, of that band's music, is probably the pinnacle of like buying a comic book from from the writer that you like, right, or the artist that you like, because, or getting the signature on there, right, because now you get to see the person in real life. And I think, you know, you got to be able to, you know, because you got the other side, like we were talking about convention and taking Gods Among Men to Supernova, and that having that in, you know, in real life sort of connection with the community doesn't probably might not know you outside of Facebook or outside of what they've seen with comics, with the promotions, or with outside of Kickstarter. But now they get to see you, just like they see your band live perform live. Now they get to see you, meet you, as you guys are the writers and your artist, if he's there, work on the comic book and see them. You know, it's like the same deal, like, you know, performing live in front of people. Hey, this is my comic book. This is what it is that we're writing about. And I think, you know, you can't say, oh, we aren't able to do this because we don't have our computer to show you the digital comic that we put out.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a great comparison, actually. Yeah, like you really should be able to, you know, stand on your own feet. You know, like I love music, and I've seen probably more gigs in the past year than I ever have, and I've heard bands that play with tracks, without tracks, and you know, you can tell. Like, I think there's always going to be something that hits different when a band is playing without tracks. You know, there's a very in the moment, that atmosphere you know, there's a connection, right? Like Josh said, you know, you've got that tension of like, do they make it? Do they not? And, you know, when they do nail it, oh, it's, you know, and, you know, especially, and that's the thing as well. I think it forces bands to be better, you know, to do better, because you go, if I have a safety net, the shows, every single show is the same. Every single, you know, it's just kind of, I don't know, plateau. But there's a reason why people, you know, like Metallica comes to town and there's fans who literally buy tickets to every single show.
Yeah.
You know? And yeah, I really admire that as somebody as a fan of music. And then I can sit in the back with the comic, and, you know, my biggest regret is I'm there trying to promote the comic, which I love, but I also want to be in the front row.
Yeah. So how did, like, talking about the promotion side, so with the merchandising, what do you guys offer, like, in the sense of merchandising? Do you have an online store or something for the band itself, or do you have like a website just for the band?
Not at the moment. At the moment, the comic is only available at shows. Although for, you know, some of our friends and fans, we've made exceptions and, you know, managed to get a copy mailed out to them.
Or by a special request.
Yeah. But yeah, fine and large at the moment, we're only selling them at the shows. Once we get to what we're gonna do is the latest issue will only ever be available at shows, and then the back issues will start to become available digitally online, and also you can order physical copies too.
Right. So with the band having a kind of theme, like you know, what is that theme of the band? Because, you know, we talked about like how they you know, they've got a comic because they make what is it called, you know, with a mask and stuff. What is the story behind that sort of
Oh, okay. Well, basically in the comic, Anna's character is what you would imagine as a goddess from another realm.
Right.
And she's come to, you know, Earth, like our dimension, to recruit, you know, 4 champions of hers.
Her motives are unknown.
Yep. Similar to Gods Among Men, like, we know where this comic ends. You know, we've got a massively long arc where we want to take it, and the in-betweens, we have certain key moments that we want to do, but, you know, we'll run it for as long as we feel like we've got something to say.
I think as a comic, our approach is, because we're big fans of how manga handles stories and character development and power development. Like Josh brought up to me this thing where he said his biggest, actually maybe you explain this part and I'll continue from there.
I think my favorite writer is Masashi Kishimoto of Naruto and Boruto. And I love how, you know, from the very start, he shows you where it's going to end. And you're just left with questions. You know, you don't understand how it gets to that. Yeah. So when we started Anna being, you know, with Gods Among Men, it's based off real events. So we know the story. But when we started Anna, I said, we need to develop where this ends. You know, how we get there, we can take our time, but we need to know where we're going.
Right.
I think on the point of you know, how we want to design and sort of develop characters is that I remember Josh said to me once, he said his problem with a lot of Western superheroes is they kind of have set powers and then it caps there. Like, you know, Spider-Man shoots webs, climbs walls. His upgrade isn't he can shoot more webs and climb faster, you know. There was a little bit of stagnancy in the way they were designed, whereas in a lot of manga they tend to start out with sort of maybe some basic powers, but then they learn new moves and they start to upgrade and power up, you know.
Right.
It's you know, expanding on character development. I think there should also be, like, you know, this power scaling where they, as on a physical level, develop as well and grow.
Because I like to describe it as it's got like the spirit of manga but told with Western art style.
Right. Now, with Supernova coming up, and you've guys got like 50 of these full cover variants that are going to release there. What are you actually taking to? Let me bring this up again. um, there we go. What are you actually taking to Kickstarter itself?
So our Kickstarter tiers will offer at the entry level, people can jump in, you know, if they're going like, oh, maybe I just want to sort of help out a little bit, but, you know, go for a smaller reward. So one thing that we are going to offer there is we won't be doing full digital PDFs because we do have plans to release digitally in the future, but we will give the first 7 pages, which kind of, you know, has this sort of teaser. I think it's enough that if you read the first 7 pages, you kind of go, oh, I want to know more. And that also comes along with a collection of 3 random collector's cards, which was it was something new we wanted to do. I mean, people have done trading cards before, and they're quite a common reward, but we wanted to sort of, because you wouldn't, you know, with a story like God's Among Men, you wouldn't really play trading cards, so we wanted to have them look like a trading card, but then, you know, have sort of some additional supplementary material information.
It's like a mini data book, which gives you more information.
Yeah. Stuff that you might not necessarily get in the comic. So you kind of want to get the comic along with the collector's cards together. Then we've got the comic itself. We have a tier that is the comic plus the full, I believe it's 10 designs, all the 10 different collector's cards, like a full deck. We have a very special hardcover edition, which will include custom, I think all of them get a custom forward written by Josh. And we'll also have a custom little remark by artist Ben Sullivan done in one of the pages. And they will also each get an exclusive QR code, which takes people to a video. Then we also have the Comic Plus original art. So that's some of the, you know, we pick some of the best pages, really eye-catching stuff. So page 7 here, Ben's, what I love is that Ben is a pencil and paper artist. So whenever we go over his and see the original art, it just, there's something so magical about, you know, you've put all this work, we've talked, we discussed, and then he shows you this sheet of paper with everything. Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah, so that's what we'll be offering. And yeah, I'm excited for, you know, like when I mentioned the QR code thing, we do want people to hunt for the wider story. So we kind of,
some of the QR codes actually even prove the realism of this, because they linked, some of them are public, some are private videos on YouTube, and some of them were uploaded way back in 2012. So yeah, it kind of links like, holy shit, this is real.
That's actually quite cool, man. Like the actual interaction between reality and, you know, and you're taking your book there and people getting like, the QR code's going to like that, like case notes or news reports and stuff like that. Is that what you're talking about?
They're actually YouTube videos that I uploaded, you know, probably over a decade ago when I really first started working on this story way back many years ago, and I didn't know how I was going to tell it other than through videos and music, and a lot of it was shot off I think it was an iPhone 4 at the time.
So you can tell by the picture quality that it's not a modern, it's not a, you know. It's like, but I mean,
that also adds the to the reality of the situation, right? I mean, people, I think a lot of creatives these days don't actually give the audience benefit of the doubt of what of like how they see things now. I mean, like when I'm looking back at like because I basically live on the internet, right? And so when I look back at old stories and people telling you know, kind of like documentary fashion about that, I go, that's pretty cool, because I don't care about what the, you know, I looked at a video for myself like in 2007, like when I was making like when I started first time on YouTube, using my PC laptop on the counter, me cooking, right? That's all I was doing at that time. you know, and like, and I look at it, I'm like, it's so washed out. It's so kind of like green, you know, natural light and the backwash from the, you know, light coming in. It's like, now it's like, I got a 720p camera and it's all this, you know. Back then it's
Yeah.
like something like about 360 or something, you know. But like, I think a lot of people in our age group, right, like say 30 onwards, we fully understand because we've grown up with this new technology called the internet, and like, and 1080p, right, that's like magic to us because
Mm.
we never had 1080p. Like, but the audience today, like this generation, that's all they know. 720 is their entry into, you know, kind of like imagery,
Uh,
right?
I think 4K is their they're like 4K is standard now.
Yeah, it's crazy, you know, and I love that. I think, you know, but on the other hand, you know, I think this is the best generation we can live in technology wise, and the access that we have. Like, I can talk to you guys across, you know, over in Aussie right now, and then you know, and learn about what you guys doing. I didn't even know you guys had a band. Didn't even know you were involved in bands. And to be honest, when Aaron got in touch with me, I didn't even know Josh was part of it, right? And so because and then he hits me up, and I'm like, yo, my brother's gonna be there as well. I go, oh, even better. Now I got two people. It's like, oh,
You're like,
what part is he gonna play with it, you know? And I think this is a joy of actually having something like this and being able to put, you know, bring you creators on and learn about your life, learn about how you got into comics. But not everybody has the same entry into comics that I might have or you might have, and somebody might be just got into like a year ago, right? But they still are going, you know, are still welcome to it. It's not like somebody's out here gatekeeping. All we want is like good stories. Understand that this is a new medium, that the way that's been told, and you then, once you learn, and here's the thing I love about what you said earlier on, Josh, is that gotta learn what the boundaries are, what the rules are, and then break them. I mean, that's the one thing as creatives you have to do. If you and you don't need to do it, but you know, if you want to be unique, you want to stand out, you have to break the rules and bring something special. Because if you're doing everything the same way everybody else is doing, it becomes stagnant, and people will just walk away after a couple issues in, or even one issue in. But and so you want to do something that's a bit more special, and I think that's why I love the idea that I get to see a true crime comic book in the indie convention scene. I mean, convention in the sense of like indie community, a creative scene where I haven't seen that right now. Like, I have not spoken to anybody in the last, you know, decade or something. I'm not decade, so like maybe last 5 years that is doing a true crime story in the indie scene at all, right? Which is because the reason is that there isn't a market for it. That'll be the first thing people will say, like, oh, they're, but how do you know until you put something out, right? You create the market. Your product, like, who knew that Pepsi or Coke would be a thing until they did Pepsi and Coke, you know?
I think it was great because when we looked at the Anna comic, this also kind of spurred on this thought for us, which was, if you're the first ones to do something, you kind of can't be wrong, you know? Like, every mistake you make will be your first, but you wouldn't have that template.
There's nothing for you to be judged against.
Yeah.
It's
And I
perfect.
like
that's good, man. That's right. You know, like, if you're the first one out the gate, then, you know, who are you going to judge you against? That's awesome.
There's the quote by, I think, Johnny Rotten that I really like, and he said, "I don't have to impress anybody other than myself."
Yeah.
So that's always it's kind of like a standard I've held myself to. Like, if I'm pleased with it, that's good enough. It doesn't matter whether it's being done or it's trending or it's acceptable.
Awesome. So with that in mind, what we do here in closing is, like, we'll give you like 3 to 5 minutes, and because there's two of you guys, I'm going to give it a bit more longer, where we do like a words of wisdom, which is you know, what you've learned, what you think, you know, for new creators, and, you know, because you guys also, you know, part of the band, also, you know, for people who are learning or wanting to get into music or get into comics, something like, you know, what you think you would like yourself would have liked to have heard when you were getting into this as well. And I think there's probably a better way of putting that as a word of wisdom thing. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes, or, you know, a couple seconds, whatever, and then I'll put you on solo, and then I'll leave it to you guys, and you guys take as long as you want to, you know, give us your word. It does, you know, according to what you want people to hear about that.
Awesome.
So let me know when you're ready, and I'll solo you out.
I'll go first because mine's more depressing, and you can.
Oh, okay. Then I'll all right. Yeah. He comes in with the depressing, and I'll uplift it up.
All right, just give me 1 sec. Here we go. Words of wisdom. Move it. And you guys set?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Take it away.
Words of wisdom. Well, that's a very heavy title, but I don't know if it's wisdom, but this is my outlook. I'm actually, you know, I've thought about this a lot. Like if someone asks me, what do you say to somebody who wants to get into doing creative stuff, doing art? And my honest answer is that if you say something like, chase your dreams, it's kind of irresponsible to just say that and leave it at that, because it's very hard for me to stress in a few minutes how incredibly difficult this is. There's a lot of pain, a lot of sacrifice that goes into being an artist. So I think we have a bit of a, I don't know if it's a problem, but in our society, we almost deify creatives when I really don't think it should be. There's absolutely nothing wrong with somebody who wants to work a trade and be great at that trade. I don't think that creatives, as much as yes, they're an important part, but you know, a guitarist is no more important than a plumber or a sparky. So I would say to first think about, you know, is this something that you want to do? Because if you want to do it, I don't think that's enough. I think you need to be somebody who you need to do it. Where if you weren't doing it, you are genuinely unhappy in life. And that's kind of where I am. Like, I enjoy doing it, but more so if I'm not doing it, that's when I'm depressed. So that's my advice. You know, stop and think, how badly do you want to or need to do it? Because it's a pretty bleak road for a lot of it.
My uplifting note will be to continue from that and say, you don't know how much you want to do something until you do it. And I had a good friend who once said, there's like 1,000 reasons not to do something, so just do it and give it your all. Give it as much as you are able to give, because if you don't, then you won't know if that's for you. And you know, then you'll know, all right, you know, kind of like what you said, Ari, like, is it time to throw in the towel, or do you double down? You know, and that's the thing, right? There's no TED talk, there's nothing that will ever be able to give you that answer. The best way to know is to try and fail at something, and then if there's something inside of you that says, let's try again, you know, win, lose, or fail, then keep trying. But you never know if you don't take the first step. So just do.
Which I also agree with that.
Yeah.
Despite what,
and I agree with what he said too, but we're, you know, yin and yang.
That's, and I think, like, I mean, it's, you both are correct in that, and I think that's great balance, because, like, you know, you got, there's a depressing, there's a good part, and I think that's both what you need really as a person getting into arts, is knowing that, like, is this really what you want? You know, is this really where you want? And that's, and one of the other things is this really what's going to make you happy? Like for me, like it was my sister, right? Like because what had happened was, like, I moved to a new place in this apartment, and I was depressed the first day I got in here, because I just still, you know, coming out, and I was by myself for the first time in decades, right? Because I'd always been like flatting and rooming and whatever, and you know, and I was here. I was like, "Hey, come over. I feel lonely." And my sister goes, "Who's, like, you know, married, got kids?" And she goes, "I think you're gonna have to find a way to deal with that, right now, because this is the first night you're in, and it's silent. I'm setting up my room, putting all my shit up, and I go, well, she said, find what makes you happy and do that, and 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 I was like, what the hell makes me happy? And I went, music and comics. And so basically, you know, it was like, that's it. That's all I needed. And 5 years later, or 6 years later now, I'm so happy. I'm so excited about what I'm doing. And I've just threw myself into it. And like you're talking about TED Talk, right? I remember listening to TED Talk. Like for that first couple of months, I was just listening to TED Talks and trying to learn how to deal with my own emotions and my neurodivergence, right? Like, okay, so when this happens, I should do this to fix it, get out of that thinking pattern. So if you know, so I would like get into if I felt like, you know, kind of depressed and angry, I'd go in the room, in the bath shower, and I like silent scream, right, in the shower while saying to myself, and get it out that way, and nobody knows I'm screaming, and I'm, you know, but like I'm learning how to walk away from being a depressed person into a very creative, very outgoing person who's been depressed for 2 years, and now being creative and changing how I rethought my life going forward. And like, so I think what you guys said is really, really on point with that. You know, that you got to figure out really what you want in life. And so, like I said, my sister was the one who told me. It wasn't me who came up with that. You know, she's like 10 years younger than me, right? And still, you know, and I've traveled all over the place and lived with so many different people, and probably half the experiences of her, but I mean, twice the experience of her, yet I needed someone outside of myself to tell me what makes you happy, right? What is it that's going to get you there and make you decide this is what you want for your life? And I've been, and like the thing here is like, I've never been as happy as I've been in the last few years that I've been doing this, and like not doing this, but being part of like being in the creative scene, doing comics, talking to people, and, you know, joining other people and networking it locally to be able to put on shows and events. And then out here now talk to you guys all over the way in Aussie, talking about this awesome book that I'm quite excited about, which I want a full cover of, because it's something special. I think this is really special, and I think people should back it, and I'm definitely going to back it. But I'm also going to get the physical, you know, copy of the full cover as well.
Yep.
You know, because yeah, because I want, you know, I want to have something unique as well as support you guys, because, and here's the thing, like last week, I think it was like last week or the week before, we had, and while Rico was on here, and he went and bought a I actually went and, you know, supported the digital copy, which is around $15 New Zealand. But he went and actually bought the I think it was Henry. I can't remember his last name. I have trouble with, you know, different name pronunciations. But we did an interview on here. He's from Aussie as well, and he had an option of like a comic store, you know, where you could buy a whole bunch of different variances for your comic store. And so Rico got it because he was co-hosting that night. Rico basically said, hey, look, I'd like to do the comic set, like the comic store set, right? And so now I actually have a physical copy coming because I want a physical copy as well. Now I'm paying for not only digital, I'm actually paying for the physical. And if I hadn't done that interview with him, he wouldn't have got that sale for over $200, right? From just one person. And I think a lot of people don't realize why podcasts are important, not only because that not only we get to talk to you guys, but other people get to see you and have the connection behind the scenes. But we also go and finance and back your books as well. And we hope that other people would as well. So thank you for coming on. And I really appreciate both of you guys coming on, man. I really
thank you very much
for reaching out. Yeah, thank you for reaching out, Josh and Aaron. So in finishing, do you guys want to say something, and then I'll finish off out here?
I feel like I'm pretty good. I think we capped it off.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time, man.
Yeah, thank you. Only last thing I guess I'll just cap off is I really like what you said about, you know, like what Josh said about knowing the rules to break them, and what you said about, you know, the Marvel DC being sort of that benchmark. And I think it's really important to have culture, the primary culture, and basically what we want to do is come in with Gods Among Men and be the counterculture.
Right.
The antithesis of the mainstream.
Yeah, it's like the indie comics is a punks out here, right? Because I'm I'm an old school punk metalhead, so that's how I see it, right? I see the indie comics being the punk. You're gonna have ones that like just gonna play the one string bass chord, and then you're gonna have the guys that like fully run out there like freaking what's his name? Gosh, who's the Metallica bassist, right?
Hilo.
Cliff Burton, right? And he's out there just anesthesia, right? So you're gonna have the pinnacle of the of that, or you're gonna have like the low end, and hopefully we can be the with your comic, with our comic, and with many others coming out right now, we can have the same quality of comics that will sit there, and this is what I want, right? That our comics can sit there on the shelf and compete for the same dollar at that quality level. I don't want to see like kind of like lower end, because I want to see us competing for that same market dollar that Marvel and DC and the top 5 have, right? And so I want, that's why I want to promote you guys like yourselves coming out here doing amazing work. And and like Ross is saying here, right? Thanks for sharing with us, and keep it going, man. And thank you, Ross, for hanging out again. Hopefully Wellington isn't too hot today. And thank you, guys. And guys, for you guys viewing now or later on, please do check out, the links are all in the chat. But do check out Gods Among Men and do support, indie creatives, because, like I said, with the punks out here making amazing new works.
I like that. The punks.
Yeah. So, all right. Thank you. And we'll see you next time. And everybody else, wherever you are, be well, be safe. And if you got a loved one close by, give them a hug, give them a kiss, let them know that you care. And if they're not close by, get on social media or whatever, give them a call and let them know that you're there. And in case, you don't know what people are feeling or going through right now, and they might need that little word from you. Or maybe you need a word as well. So, and social media is a great way of doing that. And for Ross, thank you for watching, Ross, and everybody else that's been watching live. And like I say here, you guys join us and chat whenever. I like the questions, I like the opinions, and I like the interaction with the live chat. And also, it's good to have the interaction in the live stream, because I only do live streams, right? And then we later on clip it. But thank you for watching, and we've got a show on tomorrow. We got another live interview on Sunday, and then I think next week we might have more live. We've got another guest coming on as well. So wherever you are, be well. Click it down, everybody. Thank you, Mac Brothers. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Aaron. Hey, let me know once you guys kick off, and we'll get you back on just for the launch, right? And also so we can share share photos from Supernova as well. That'd be awesome. Make sure you guys do some little videos from Supernova, like little short clips and stuff to share about that. It'll be really cool for promotion. All right.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys. Nice meeting you guys, man. It was really good time.
Cheers. See ya. See ya.
And I've been waiting for the noise to die down, so I could have some time to think back to when I wanted to be with